The security camera captured everything. A young cashier crouched in the supermarket's basement, cradling her hidden baby while her stomach growled from hunger. She had 15 minutes before her manager would notice she was gone. What Emma Hayes didn't know was that the mysterious maintenance worker watching from the shadows wasn't who he claimed to be. He was Daniel Cross, the billionaire CEO of Crestmart, and what he witnessed that day would shatter every assumption he'd ever made about sacrifice, love, and what people do to survive. Dear viewers, welcome to a story that will change how you see everyday heroes. Please comment or your city below. I'd love to know how far this story has traveled. Now, let's begin. The fluorescent lights of Crestmart Superstore hummed their familiar tune at 6:47 a.m. as Emma Hayes punched her time card with practiced precision. Her fingers already slightly swollen from the previous day's 8-hour shift. At the register trembled slightly as she tucked the card back into its slot. The break room smelled of burnt coffee and yesterday's microwaved fish, a combination that would have turned her stomach if she hadn't trained herself to ignore hunger pangs months ago. "You're early again," Marcus, the night shift supervisor, observed as he gathered his belongings. His eyes, bloodshot from the overnight shift, studied her with a mixture of curiosity and concern. "That's the 4th time this week." Emma forced a smile, the kind she'd perfected for customers, bright enough to seem genuine, shallow enough to discourage further questions. "Just trying to stay ahead of the morning rush. You know how Tuesdays can be." Marcus nodded, though Tuesday mornings were notoriously slow. He'd worked at Crestmart for 15 years, long enough to recognize when someone was running from something or to something. But he'd also learned when not to pry. "Well, make sure you take your breaks. Corporate's been cracking down on labor violations." If only he knew, Emma thought, watching him leave. She waited until his footsteps faded down the corridor before allowing her shoulders to sag. The weight she carried wasn't just physical exhaustion, it was the crushing burden of a secret that could cost her everything. She glanced at the industrial clock on the wall, 6:52 a.m. She had exactly 8 minutes before she needed to be at her register, 8 minutes that would have to last her until her first break at 10:30. Emma reached into her worn canvas tote bag, her fingers finding the small container of formula she'd prepared at 4 a.m., keeping it cold with ice packs she'd bought at the dollar store. Everything had to be perfect. Everything had to be ready. The morning crew began filtering in Janet from the deli counter, complaining about her husband's snoring. Tyler from produce earbuds, already in, head bobbing to music only he could hear. Margaret from customer service, her perfume announcing her arrival before she turned the corner. Emma exchanged pleasantries with practiced ease, each interaction a carefully choreographed dance to appear normal, engaged, present. "Emma, honey, you're looking thin." Margaret observed, her hawk eyes missing nothing despite her 72 years. "When's the last time you had a proper meal? Had a big dinner last night." Emma lied smoothly, though dinner had been a packet of crackers and a bruised apple from the produce department's discard bin items. Tom from produce secretly set aside for her, though neither of them acknowledged the arrangement aloud. Margaret's eyes narrowed slightly, but before she could probe further, the morning announcement crackled through the speakers. "Good morning, Crestmart team. Let's make today amazing for our customers. Remember, smiles are free, but they're priceless to those we serve." Emma had heard the same recording every morning for the past 18 months. The voice belonged to Daniel Cross, the company's enigmatic CEO, though she'd only seen him in the quarterly video messages. Played in the break room, a handsome man in his mid-30s, with eyes that seemed to see through the camera, as if he could personally observe each of his 40,000 employees across the country. She hurried to her register 7, her domain for the next 8 odd hours. The familiar beep of the scanner, the whisper of plastic bags, the mechanical "thank you for shopping at Crestmart" became her rhythm, her meditation, her survival mechanism. Each transaction was a small performance, each customer a brief audience for the character she played, the cheerful, helpful cashier without a care in the world. But at 8:15 a.m., everything changed. A maintenance worker she'd never seen before appeared at the far end of her checkout lane, pushing a yellow mop bucket with the slow, methodical pace of someone who had nowhere urgent to be. He was tall, maybe 6 feet, with shoulders that seemed too broad for the faded blue coveralls he wore. A baseball cap shadowed his face, and he kept his head down, focused on the floor he was supposedly cleaning. Emma's first thought was that he was new. The company had been hiring temporary workers for the upcoming holiday season. Her second thought was that he was watching her. She couldn't explain how she knew. It was something in the way he moved, the angle of his body, always keeping her in his peripheral vision. The feeling made her skin prickle with unease. A customer approached Mrs. Patterson, a regular who bought the same items every Tuesday: whole wheat bread, skim milk, bananas, and a single serving of prepared lasagna from the deli. "Good morning, Mrs. Patterson," Emma greeted her, forcing her attention away from the maintenance worker. "How's Mr. Patterson's hip doing?" "Oh, you remembered." The elderly woman's face lit up. "He's doing much better, thank you for asking. The physical therapy is helping, though he complains about it constantly." They chatted as Emma scanned the items, but her awareness of the maintenance worker never faded. He had moved closer now, mopping near the magazine rack just 15 feet away. She could see his hands, strong, calloused, but something about them seemed wrong. They were too clean, too careful. Working maintenance at Crestmart meant dealing with spills, garbage, and worse. After a week, your hands showed it. His looked like they'd never touched industrial cleaner. 1647, Emma announced, accepting Mrs. Patterson's exact change. She always had exact change coins, sorted in a small vinyl purse. As Mrs. Patterson left, Emma's phone vibrated in her pocket. Her heart jumped. The phone was on silent, but she knew that vibration pattern, 3 short bursts. It was the alarm she'd set for 8:30, reminding her of something far more important than any customer or mysterious maintenance worker. She needed to request her break early. "Janet," she called to her supervisor, who was counting bills at the customer service desk. "I need to take my 15. Can Sarah cover?" Janet glanced at the clock, frowning. "It's only been an hour and a half since you clocked in." "I know, but—" Emma pressed a hand to her stomach, grimacing. "The coffee this morning isn't agreeing with me." It was a lie that came too easily, adding to the collection of deceptions that had become her daily currency. Janet waved her away with a sympathetic look. "Go, but make it quick. The morning rush starts at 9. Emma nodded, already moving, but as she passed the maintenance worker, he looked up. For a split second their eyes met, and Emma felt her breath catch. His eyes were gray, the color of winter storms, and they held an intensity that seemed to see straight through her carefully constructed facade. Then the moment passed. He looked back down at his mop, and Emma hurried past, her heart pounding for reasons she couldn't quite name. The employee corridor stretched before her, a beige tunnel lit by harsh fluorescence that made everyone look sick. Emma's footsteps echoed as she walked faster, then faster still, until she was almost running. She passed the break room, past the employee restrooms, past the manager's office where Janet would be returning soon. At the end of the corridor was a door marked "Authorized Personnel Only Electrical Storage." Emma pulled out a key, not her key, but one she'd found months ago, abandoned and forgotten in the break room's lost and found. She'd kept it on impulse, never imagining she'd need it for something like this. The door opened to a narrow staircase descending into darkness. Emma flicked the light switch, but only every third bulb worked, creating pools of shadow between islands of weak yellow light. The basement smelled of concrete dust and old cardboard, with an underlying dampness that never quite went away. She descended quickly, her hand trailing along the rough concrete wall for balance. 16 steps down, turn left, past the electrical panels, humming with dangerous energy, past towers of boxed inventory that hadn't been touched in years, to the far corner where she'd created her secret sanctuary. It wasn't much a cleared space, about 6 feet by 8 feet, hidden behind a wall of stacked pallets. She'd lined the concrete floor with flattened cardboard boxes, then covered those with a blanket she'd bought at Goodwill. A battery-powered lantern provided soft light, and she'd even managed to bring down an old cushion from a discarded office chair. But the centerpiece of this hidden space, the reason for all the deception and risk, lay in a large wicker basket lined with soft towels. Sophie, 3 months old, with wisps of dark hair and eyes the color of forget-me-nots. Sophie was sleeping peacefully, her tiny chest rising and falling with each breath. Emma felt the familiar rush of love and terror that came every time she saw her daughter, love that made her heart feel too big for her chest. Terror that she'd be discovered, that Sophie would be taken away, that everything would fall apart. "Hi, baby girl," Emma whispered, kneeling beside the basket. "Mommy's here." Sophie stirred at the sound of her voice, those perfect little eyes fluttering open. A smile, was it really a smile or just gas? Emma didn't care, spread across the baby's face, and tiny arms reached up, fingers grasping at air. Emma lifted her daughter carefully, supporting her head with practiced ease. Sophie was small for 3 months, but the pediatrician at the free clinic had assured Emma she was healthy, just taking after her mother's petite frame. "Are you hungry?" Emma asked, though she knew the answer. Sophie was always hungry at 8:45 a.m., as predictable as the sunrise. Emma had timed her feeding schedule to coincide with her breaks, 8:45 a.m., 12:30 p.m., 3:45 p.m., and once more at 9 p.m. before her shift ended. It was exhausting running up and down those stairs, feeding Sophie in 15-minute windows. But what choice did she have? She couldn't afford daycare. The cheapest option was $600 a month, more than half her rent. She couldn't leave Sophie with anyone. She had no family, no close friends, no one she trusted. And she couldn't quit her job. They needed the health insurance, meager as it was, and the steady paycheck that kept them housed and fed. So she'd created this solution, dangerous and desperate as it was. For 3 weeks now, she'd been bringing Sophie to work, hiding her in the basement during her 8-hour shifts, racing down during breaks to feed and change her. Sophie, bless her heart, seemed to understand the need for quiet. She rarely cried, as if she knew that discovery meant disaster. Emma settled into the cushion, positioning Sophie for feeding. She'd become an expert at this, able to nurse her daughter in under 10 minutes, leaving 5 minutes for burping and diaper changes. Every second counted. As Sophie fed, Emma allowed herself a moment of peace. Down here, in this forgotten corner of the supermarket, she could pretend things were different. She could imagine she was home in a real nursery, with painted walls and a rocking chair, with time to sing lullabies and read stories. She could pretend she wasn't 23 years old, alone with $67 in her bank account, and no idea how she'd make it to the next paycheck. "Your daddy would have loved you," she whispered to Sophie, though thinking about Ryan still hurt, like touching a fresh bruise. He'd been killed in a construction accident when she was 5 months pregnant. No life insurance, no savings, just gone. One phone call had shattered the modest future they'd planned together. Sophie finished feeding, and Emma carefully burped her, watching the clock on her phone. 3 minutes left. She changed Sophie's diaper with the efficiency of a pit crew, using supplies she bought in bulk with her employee discount. The dirty diaper went into a sealed bag, which she'd smuggle out in her purse at the end of her shift. "I have to go, sweet girl," Emma said, laying Sophie back in the basket. "But I'll be back soon, I promise." Sophie gurgled, her tiny hand wrapping around Emma's finger with surprising strength. The touch nearly broke Emma's resolve. How many mothers had to leave their babies in basements? How many had to choose between working and caring for their child? "Be good," Emma whispered, carefully extracting her finger. "Please be good." She turned on the white noise machine, a thrift store find that masked the occasional sounds from above. She checked Sophie's diaper again, adjusted the blanket, made sure the formula bottle was within reach. If Sophie became fussy, Then, with one last look at her daughter, Emma forced herself to leave. The journey back up the stairs felt like swimming through molasses. Each step took her farther from Sophie, from the only thing that really mattered. But she had to survive this day, and the next, and the next. Somehow she'd find a better solution. Somehow things would get easier. She emerged from the basement door to find the maintenance worker standing in the corridor, his mop and bucket beside him. Emma's heart stopped. "That area's off limits," he said, his voice deeper than she'd expected, with an accent she couldn't quite place. Educated, refined, nothing like the usual maintenance crew. I know," Emma stammered, her mind racing for an excuse. Janet asked me to check on something. Inventory issue." He studied her for a long moment, those storm-gray eyes revealing nothing. Inventories on the second level, not the basement. Emma felt sweat bead on her forehead. Old inventory. Returns that never got processed. Janet said, "Emma." Janet's voice echoed down the corridor. "Break's over! We've got a line! Coming!" Emma called back, grateful for the interruption. She started to move past the maintenance worker, but he shifted slightly, not quite blocking her path, but making her pause. "Be careful," he said quietly. "The basement can be dangerous. Electrical hazards, unstable stacking. Someone could get hurt down there." Was it a warning, a threat? Emma couldn't tell. She nodded quickly and hurried past him, her legs shaking. As she returned to her register, she could feel his eyes on her back, watching, evaluating. The morning rush had indeed started. A line of customers stretched back toward the pharmacy, and Sarah looked relieved to see her. "Thank God you're back. It's been crazy." Emma slipped behind her register, her practiced smile sliding into place, even as her mind churned with worry. Had the maintenance worker heard? Sophie, would he report her? Should she go back down, grab Sophie and run? But run where? With what money? To what life? "Did you find everything you needed today?" she asked the next customer, scanning items on autopilot. Beep, smile, bag, receipt, next. The rhythm resumed, but her awareness remained split between her duties and the growing certainty that something had shifted, that the delicate balance she'd maintained was beginning to crack. The maintenance worker had disappeared, but Emma knew he'd be back. Men like him, observant, careful, intelligent, didn't just forget things. He'd noticed something, and he'd keep watching until he figured out what she was hiding. At 10:30, her official break time, Emma practically ran to the basement. Sophie was awake but content, playing with her own fingers, with the fascination only a baby could muster. Emma fed her again, changed her, held her close, and breathed in her baby smell powder and milk and innocence. "We might have a problem," she whispered to Sophie, who grabbed at her mother's hair with delight. "But don't worry, Mommy will figure it out. Mommy always figures it out." But even as she said it, Emma wondered if this time she'd finally run out of solutions. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of anxiety. Every time Emma heard footsteps behind her, she expected to see security or Janet or the police. Every time the store's PA system crackled to life, she braced for her name to be called, for the summons that would end everything. But nothing happened. Customers came and went. She smiled, scanned, bagged, and thanked. During the lunch rush, she caught a glimpse of the maintenance worker again, this time cleaning near the deli counter. He didn't look her way, seemed completely absorbed in his work, but Emma wasn't fooled. She'd developed a sixth sense for danger, a survival skill learned from too many close calls. Her lunch break was at 12:30. Technically, she was entitled to 30 minutes unpaid, but she never took more than 15. She couldn't afford to lose the pay, and she couldn't leave Sophie alone that long. This time, when she descended to the basement, she moved more carefully, listening for footsteps, checking corners. The basement remained empty except for the ghosts of abandoned inventory and her hidden daughter. Sophie was crying, not loudly, just the soft whimpers that meant she was hungry and wet. Emma's heart broke a little more. No baby should have to learn to cry quietly. No baby should have to spend their days in a basement, surrounded by concrete and shadows instead of sunlight and toys. "I'm so sorry," Emma whispered, gathering Sophie into her arms. "I'm so sorry." She fed Sophie quickly, mechanically, her mind elsewhere. She needed a plan. The maintenance worker clearly suspected something. It was only a matter of time before he investigated further or reported his suspicions to management. She had to find another solution, but what she'd already explored, every option she could think of. Her phone buzzed a text from Janet. "Where are you, line at your register?" Emma's 15 minutes weren't up, but she couldn't argue. She settled Sophie back in the basket, kissing her forehead. "Just a few more hours, baby. Then we can go home." Home was a generous term for the studio apartment they shared, 400 square feet with a leaky faucet and neighbors who fought constantly. But it was theirs, at least for now. Rent was due in a week, and Emma was $60 short. She'd have to pick up extra shifts or maybe sell something. The wedding ring Ryan had given her was worth maybe $200, but she couldn't bear to part with it. It was all she had left of him besides Sophie. She emerged from the basement to find the corridor empty this time. Small mercy. But as she rounded the corner toward the main floor, she nearly collided with someone coming the other way. It was the maintenance worker. This close, she could smell his cologne, expensive, subtle nothing like the industrial deodorant most of the staff wore. His eyes met hers, and for a moment, neither of them moved. "Excuse me," Emma said, trying to step around him. He moved aside but spoke as she passed. "You dropped this." Emma turned to see him holding out a small white object. Sophie's pacifier, the one she always kept in her pocket as backup. It must have fallen when she pulled out her phone. "That's not—" She started to deny, but the look in his eyes stopped her. He knew. Somehow he knew. "Babies need their mothers," he said quietly, pressing the pacifier into her hand. "But mothers need support. Sometimes help comes from unexpected places." Before Emma could respond, he walked away, pushing his mop bucket around the corner and out of sight. She stood frozen, the pacifier burning in her palm like a brand. What did he mean? Was he threatening to expose her, offering to help? Or was she reading too much into the words of a strange maintenance worker with observant eyes? The afternoon stretched on like taffy, each minute an eternity. Emma made mistakes, gave wrong change, forgot to bag items, stumbled over her usual cheerful script. Customers noticed, some annoyed, others concerned. Mrs. Chen, who came in every Tuesday for her weekly shopping, patted Emma's hand gently. "You look tired, dear. Are you taking care of yourself?" Emma wanted to laugh or cry, maybe both. Taking care of herself was a luxury she couldn't afford. Every dollar went to Sophie formula diapers, the few clothes she could buy secondhand. Emma ate when she could, slept when Sophie slept, and existed in the spaces between necessities. "I'm fine, Mrs. Chen, thank you for asking." But she wasn't fine. She was drowning in slow motion, and everyone around her was too busy with their own lives to notice. Or so she thought. At 3:45, her last break, Emma found a surprise in the basement. Next to Sophie's basket was a small cooler she'd never seen before. Inside was a sandwich, real deli meat and cheese, not the day-old clearance items she usually ate, an apple, a bottle of water, and a note. "A mother who doesn't eat can't feed her baby. No cameras in this corner. Your secret is safe." No signature, but Emma knew who'd left it. The maintenance worker. Her hands shook as she held the note. He knew. He definitely knew. But instead of reporting her, he'd left food. Why Sophie was awake watching the play of shadows on the ceiling with wonder. Emma picked her up, holding her close, feeling the rapid beat of her daughter's heart against her chest. "Someone knows about us," she whispered. "I don't know if that's good or bad." She ate the sandwich while feeding Sophie, surprised by how hungry she actually was. When had she last eaten a full meal? Sunday, Saturday. The days blurred together in a haze of exhaustion and worry. The apple was crisp, sweet, better than anything she'd eaten in months. The water was cold, refreshing. Such simple things, but they felt like miracles. Emma wanted to cry at the kindness even as she worried about the cost. Everything had a price. What would this stranger want in return? As she prepared to leave Sophie for the last stretch of her shift, Emma noticed something else. A small battery-powered fan had been placed near the basket, creating a gentle breeze in the stifling basement air. Another kindness from the mysterious maintenance worker. Maybe, she whispered to Sophie, maybe we have a guardian angel. A strange one who mops floors, but still. The last 2 hours of her shift were always the hardest. Her feet ached, her back screamed, and the worry about Sophie intensified as the day wore on. What if she cried and someone heard? What if there was an emergency? What if the constant refrain of single motherhood? At 5:45, just 15 minutes before her shift ended, Daniel Cross himself walked into the store. Emma recognized him immediately, the CEO, whose voice she heard every morning, whose face adorned the employee motivation posters in the break room. He was taller than she'd expected, broader too, with an easy confidence that seemed to part the crowds before him. He was accompanied by a small entourage, the district manager, the store manager she'd only seen twice, and several people in suits taking notes on tablets. A store visit from the CEO was rare, momentous. Everyone straightened up, smiled wider, moved faster. Emma kept her head down, focusing on her customer, praying he wouldn't come to her register. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. Let's observe the checkout process, she heard him say, his voice carrying the same warm authority as in the recordings. Register 7 looks busy. Her register, of course. Emma's hands shook as she scanned items for Mr. Rodriguez, a regular who always bought ingredients for elaborate meals she could only imagine. Tomatoes, fresh basil, heavy cream pasta she couldn't pronounce. The kind of food she used to cook with Ryan back when they had dreams and time and each other. She could feel Daniel Cross approaching, could sense the attention of the entire entourage focusing on her. Her mouth went dry. What if they asked her about her breaks? What if they wanted to inspect her belongings? What if, good afternoon, Daniel Cross, said, his voice closer than expected. Emma looked up directly into storm gray eyes she'd seen before. The world tilted. The maintenance worker, the CEO, they were the same person. He showed no sign of recognition, his expression professionally pleasant but distant. How long have you been with Crestmart? 18 months. Emma managed her voice barely a whisper. And how do you find it working here? It was a standard question, the kind CEOs asked during store visits. Emma knew the expected answer, positive, grateful, enthusiastic about the company's mission. But looking into those gray eyes, knowing what he knew, she found herself speaking the truth. It's challenging, she said carefully, but I'm grateful for the opportunity. Something flickered in his expression, approval. Understanding, he nodded slowly. Challenges help us grow, but gratitude keeps us grounded. He paused, then added quietly, so only she could hear, both are necessary for survival. Then he was moving on, asking Mr. Rodriguez about his shopping experience, praising the store's cleanliness, discussing metrics with the managers. But Emma felt the weight of that interaction, the layers of meaning in those simple words. He knew. He'd known all along. The billionaire CEO had been pretending to be a maintenance worker, and he'd discovered her secret. But instead of firing her, calling security, or destroying her life, he'd left her food. He'd provided a fan for Sophie. He'd kept her secret. Why? The question haunted her through the final minutes of her shift, through the careful process of packing up Sophie and smuggling her out in the large tote bag she'd modified for this purpose, through the walk to the bus stop in the gathering dusk. On the bus with Sophie hidden beneath a nursing cover, finally able to feed her properly, Emma tried to make sense of it all. Daniel Cross was worth billions. His company employed thousands. He could have anything, anyone. Why would he care about a single cashier? And her hidden baby, Sophie, fell asleep during the bus ride, lulled by the motion and her full belly. Emma stared out the window at the city, passing by other people heading home from their own struggles, their own secrets, their own desperate attempts at survival. Her phone buzzed. An unknown number had sent a text. Every Tuesday and Thursday maintenance work in the basement. 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. No one will disturb the electrical storage area. The door will be unlocked. Emma read the message 3 times before it sank in. He was giving her permission, protecting her secret, ensuring Sophie's safety. But still, why that night in their tiny apartment, Emma gave Sophie a proper bath in the kitchen sink, dressed her in the least worn of her second-hand pajamas, and sang her the lullabies her own mother had sung back before cancer took her back when Emma still believed in happy endings. "Your guardian angel is a billionaire," she whispered to Sophie as she laid her in the second-hand crib that took up half the apartment. "I don't understand it, but maybe I don't need to." But as she lay on her own narrow bed staring at water stains on the ceiling, Emma couldn't stop thinking about Daniel Cross, about the way he'd looked at her, not with pity or contempt, but with something else. Recognition, perhaps, as if he saw in her something familiar, something he understood. The next morning, Wednesday, Emma arrived at work to find a new sign on the basement door. Authorized maintenance personnel only, Tuesdays and Thursdays. Her key still worked, and inside the basement had been transformed. The corner where she kept Sophie had been properly sectioned off with industrial shelving, creating a more private, secure space. A small space heater provided warmth. A comfortable chair, not fancy, but clean and supportive, replaced the old cushion. A small refrigerator hummed quietly in the corner, already stocked with bottles of water and formula. A note was taped to the chair. "Every mother deserves a safe place for her child. This area is now off limits to other staff. Security cameras have been redirected. No one will bother you here." Emma sank into the chair, overwhelmed. This wasn't just kindness, it was systematic protection. Daniel Cross had essentially created a secret nursery in the basement of his store. The risk he was taking was enormous. If corporate found out, if the media discovered this, the scandal would be devastating. "CEO secretly harbors baby in store basement." The headlines would write themselves. Yet he'd done it anyway. Thursday arrived gray and rainy, matching Emma's anxious mood. She'd barely slept, wondering if Daniel would appear again, if he'd demand some kind of explanation, or gratitude, or something else. Men with power rarely gave without expecting returns, but when she arrived at work there was no sign of him. The day proceeded normally, customers scanning, bagging, smiling. Sophie spent the day in her improved basement sanctuary, and Emma found herself able to relax slightly, knowing her daughter was warmer, safer, more comfortable. It was during her lunch break, as she fed Sophie in the basement, that he appeared. Not in maintenance coveralls this time, but in a simple button-down shirt and jeans, looking more like a graduate student than a CEO. "I'm sorry for startling you," he said from the doorway, not entering the sectioned-off area, respecting the boundary of her space. "I wanted to make sure everything was adequate." Emma held Sophie tighter, unsure how to respond. "Why?" she finally asked. "Why are you doing this?" He was quiet for a long moment, his eyes on Sophie. "My mother worked 3 jobs when I was young," he said finally. "She used to bring me to her night shift at a factory. I'd sleep in a supply closet while she cleaned offices. I remember the fear in her eyes every time someone walked by, terrified they'd discover me and she'd lose her job." Emma felt her throat tighten. What happened to her? "She survived. We survived. Barely, but we did. She died 5 years ago, just before Crestmart went public. She never got to see." He gestured vaguely, encompassing everything his success represented. "I founded Crestmart to be different, to treat employees better, but somewhere along the way it became just another corporation, policies over people, profits over compassion." "So this is what redemption?" Emma asked, surprising herself with her boldness. "Maybe," he admitted, "or maybe it's just one person helping another. Not everything needs a grand purpose." Sophie gurgled, drawing his attention. "How old?" 3 months. Her father, gone. Emma didn't elaborate and he didn't push. What's her name? Sophie. Sophie Grace Hayes. Beautiful name. He smiled, the first genuine smile she'd seen from him. It transformed his face, making him look younger, less burdened. My mother would have loved her. She always said babies were proof that hope never dies. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Two people from different worlds connected by the universal struggle of survival, of protecting those we love. I should let you finish your lunch, he said, stepping back. But Emma, can I call you Emma? This situation isn't sustainable. You know that, right? Fear spiked through her. Are you firing me? No, quite the opposite. I'm saying we need to find a better solution, a real one. But that will take time. For now, this space is yours. Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'll ensure no one disturbs you. The other days, be extra careful. Janet's noticed your irregular breaks. She has. I've handled it. Told her you're dealing with a medical issue that requires flexibility. She won't question it, but others might. Be careful. He turned to leave, then paused. There's food in the refrigerator. Please eat it. And there's a number taped to the underside of the chair. If there's ever an emergency, any problem at all, call it. Someone will help, no questions asked. Mr. Cross. Daniel, he corrected. In this basement, I'm just Daniel. Daniel. The name felt strange on her tongue. I don't know how to thank you. Then don't. Just take care of Sophie and yourself. Both are equally important. He left then, and Emma was alone with Sophie and her thoughts. She found the number under the chair written on a simple piece of paper, no name, just 10 digits. A lifeline she hoped she'd never need to use. The following Tuesday, Daniel appeared in the basement again, this time bringing a small box of toys, nothing fancy, just soft blocks and a rattle, the kind of thing Sophie was just beginning to notice. He stayed for just a few minutes, asking about Sophie's health. Emma's needs, never overstepping, always respectful of boundaries. It became a pattern. Tuesdays and Thursdays he'd visit during her lunch break. Sometimes he'd bring supplies, diapers he claimed were extras from a canceled delivery formula that was supposedly a promotional sample. Emma knew better but didn't challenge the fiction. Pride was a luxury she couldn't afford. They talked during those brief visits, not about Crestmart or policies or corporate strategies, but about small things. Sophie's first real laugh. Wednesday morning, 4 a.m., inexplicably delighted by Emma's yawn, the way autumn was painting the city in golds and reds. Books they'd read, though Emma hadn't had time for reading since Sophie was born. I could bring you some, Daniel offered one Thursday. What do you like? I used to love mysteries, Emma admitted, trying to figure out the puzzle before the detective. But now my whole life is a mystery I can't solve. He laughed, but it was tinged with sadness. Aren't all our lives like that? We're all just making it up as we go, pretending we know what we're doing. Even billionaire CEOs, especially billionaire CEOs, the more successful you appear, the more everyone expects you to have answers. But most days, I'm just as lost as everyone else. It was strange, Emma thought later, how easy it was to talk to him in that basement. Maybe it was the removal of pretense. She couldn't pretend her life was together when he'd literally found her baby in a basement. He couldn't maintain his CEO facade while sitting on a concrete floor, making faces at Sophie to earn her gummy smiles. But danger lurked in the comfort. Emma found herself looking forward to Tuesdays and Thursdays, not just for the safety they provided Sophie, but for those brief conversations. She caught herself checking her appearance in the bathroom mirror. Before her lunch break, noticed her heart rate spike when she heard his footsteps on the stairs. This was dangerous territory. He was her boss, her boss's boss's boss, really. He was wealthy beyond her comprehension. He was probably just being kind because of his own history, nothing more. To read anything else into it would be foolish, potentially catastrophic. Besides, she had Sophie to think about. Sophie was all that mattered. 3 weeks passed in this strange new rhythm. Emma began to believe they could maintain this arrangement, at least until she figured out something better. Sophie was thriving despite the circumstances, growing chubbier, more alert. The basement nursery, while far from ideal, was safe and secret. Then everything went wrong. It was a Monday, which meant no Daniel, no protection beyond the usual hidden corner. Emma had just returned from her morning break, having fed Sophie and settled her for a nap, when Janet approached her register. "We need to talk," Janet said, her expression unreadable. "My office, now. Sarah will cover." Emma's blood turned to ice. They knew. Someone had found out. Her mind raced through possibilities. Had someone heard Sophie cry, seen her entering the basement, found the hidden nursery despite Daniel's precautions? She followed Janet on wooden legs, each step feeling like a march toward execution. In the office, Janet closed the door and turned to face her. "Emma, I've been watching you these past weeks." "Janet, I can explain." "No need, I know about your medical condition." Emma blinked, momentarily confused, before remembering Daniel's cover story. Janet continued, "Mr. Cross himself explained your situation, but Emma, some of the other employees have noticed your irregular patterns. They're starting to talk. Saying you're getting special treatment, that you disappear for long breaks. Some are even suggesting," Janet lowered her voice, "that you're involved with someone. Management, maybe." The implication hit Emma like a slap. "That's not, I would never." "I know," Janet said quickly. "I know you're not that kind of person, but perception matters in a workplace. And with Mr. Cross taking such a personal interest in your situation—" "He's just being kind," Emma protested weakly. "Men like Daniel Cross don't do just kind," Janet said, not unkindly. "They do calculated, strategic. Everything has a purpose. I'm not saying his help isn't genuine, but Emma, you need to be careful, very careful." Emma nodded, her mind churning. She hadn't considered how it might look to others, the CEO's sudden interest in a single cashier, the special accommodations, the protected status. In trying to help her, had Daniel inadvertently painted a target on her back? "Thank you for telling me," Emma said quietly. "There's one more thing," Janet added. "Corporate's doing an inspection next week, Tuesday, every inch of the store, including storage areas, including the basement." Emma's heart stopped. Tuesday. Sophie would be there, The nursery Daniel had created would be discovered. Everything would be exposed. "When next week?" "The 15th. I'm not supposed to tell anyone, but—" "Well, you have that medical condition to consider. Maybe you should take that day off." But Emma couldn't take the day off. She'd used all her sick days when Sophie was born, delivering her alone in her apartment because she couldn't afford the hospital calling 911 only when the bleeding wouldn't stop. She had no time off left, and missing a day meant missing pay she desperately needed. "Thank you," she said again, because what else could she say? She left Janet's office in a daze. The corporate inspection would destroy everything. They'd find the nursery, investigate who authorized it, trace it back to Daniel. The scandal would be enormous. He'd lose his position, maybe face legal consequences. And Emma? She'd lose her job, certainly. Maybe Sophie, too, if Child Services decided she was an unfit mother for hiding her baby in a basement. She needed to warn Daniel, but how? She couldn't exactly walk up to the CEO and start a conversation. The number under the chair was for emergencies, but did this qualify, or would calling it only create more evidence of their connection? Emma made it through the rest of her shift on autopilot, her mind racing through increasingly desperate solutions. She could call in sick that day, claim a virus, hope Janet would cover for her. But what about the nursery itself? Even if Sophie wasn't there, the setup would raise questions. When her shift ended, she retrieved Sophie with shaking hands. Her daughter smiled up at her, blissfully unaware of the danger closing in. Emma held her close, breathing in her baby scent, trying not to cry. On the bus home, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Heard about the inspection. Don't worry, everything will be handled." Daniel. He knew, of course he knew, he probably had sources throughout the company, but what could he do? How could he possibly fix this? That night, Emma barely slept. She held Sophie close, whispering promises she wasn't sure she could keep. "We'll be okay. We'll figure it out. We always do." But for the first time since Sophie was born, Emma wasn't sure she believed her own words. Tuesday arrived with unseasonable warmth, the kind of false summer day that made people forget winter was coming. Emma stood at her register at 6:47 a.m., her usual time, but nothing else about this day would be usual. The corporate inspection team would arrive at 9. Daniel's cryptic message had promised everything would be handled, but she'd heard nothing since. Sophie was at home with Mrs. Chen, the elderly neighbor, who'd agreed to babysit for just a few hours in exchange for $20 Emma couldn't afford to spend. She'd told Mrs. Chen she had a mandatory training session, another lie added to her growing collection. But leaving Sophie with someone else even kind, Mrs. Chen, with her motherly wisdom and gentle hands, felt like leaving part of her soul behind. "You're fidgeting," Margaret observed from the customer service desk. "That medical condition acting up again." Emma forced her hands to stillness. "Just tired. Aren't we all?" Margaret's shrewd eyes lingered on Emma's face. "Though some of us have better reasons than others." Before Emma could decipher that comment, the store's atmosphere shifted. It was subtle, like the pressure change before a storm. Managers appeared from nowhere, straightening displays that were already perfect. Janet Power walked past, her usual casual stride replaced by military precision. The corporate team had arrived early. Emma saw them through the front windows, a phalanx of suits disembarking from black SUVs. They moved like a military unit, tablets and clipboards at the ready, their faces set in expressions of professional scrutiny. Her heart hammered as she recognized the lead inspector, Richard Brennan, whose reputation for finding violations was legendary. He'd once shut down a store for a single expired fire extinguisher. "Showtime," Tyler muttered from produce, his usual carefree attitude replaced by nervous energy. The team swept into the store like a tide, dispersing in all directions. Emma kept her head down, focusing on the elderly man buying his weekly groceries, cat food, TV dinners, and a single orange. His loneliness was palpable, and normally Emma would have chatted with him, but today she could barely manage her standard greeting. "They're heading to the back," Sarah whispered as she passed. "Janet's trying to stall them, but Brennan wants to see storage first." Storage, the basement. Emma's hands shook as she handed the elderly man his receipt. In 15 minutes, maybe less, they'd discover the nursery. Even without Sophie there, the setup was damning: the chair, the refrigerator, the toys Daniel had brought. How would anyone explain that? Her phone buzzed. She couldn't check it while at her register, but the vibration pattern was different, longer, more insistent. "Emergency." "Sarah," she called, "I need a bathroom break." Sarah looked annoyed but came over. Emma fled to the employee restroom, locked the door, and pulled out her phone. "Get to basement now, back entrance, trust me, D." Emma didn't hesitate. She left the restroom, but instead of returning to her register, she slipped through the loading dock area. The back entrance to the basement was through a different door, one used for major deliveries. It should have been locked, but the handle turned easily in her hand. She descended into darkness, the lights off in this section. Using her phone's flashlight, she navigated through towers of inventory toward the familiar corner. As she approached, she heard voices, multiple voices, official and demanding. "This area's been sectioned off," Brennan was saying. "Why, electrical work." Daniel's voice responded, calm and authoritative. "We've had issues with the wiring. I authorized the temporary setup myself." Emma peered around a stack of boxes. Daniel stood with the inspection team. His posture relaxed, every inch the confident CEO. But the nursery area had been transformed. The comfortable chair was gone, replaced by electrical equipment. The refrigerator had vanished. Instead, there were warning signs, caution tape, and what looked like legitimate electrical panels in various states of repair. When was this work authorized? Brennan demanded, tapping his tablet. 6 weeks ago, Daniel replied smoothly. The work order should be in the system. Facilities management has been coordinating with a specialized contractor. We can't have employees accessing this area liability issues. Brennan frowned, scrolling through his tablet. Emma held her breath. There was no way Daniel could have created backdated work orders in the system. But then Brennan nodded slowly. I see it here. Richmond Electrical Contractors, though the timeline seems aggressive. I pushed for expedited service, Daniel said. Can't have a fire hazard in one of our flagship stores. I'm sure you understand, Richard. The use of the first name was deliberate, a reminder of hierarchy. Brennan straightened slightly. Of course, Mr. Cross. Still, I'll need to verify. Please do, Daniel interrupted smoothly. In fact, I'd appreciate your team's thorough inspection of all our safety protocols. I've been concerned about compliance standards across the chain. Your expertise would be invaluable. It was masterfully done, turning potential censure into flattery, making Brennan feel important rather than challenged. The lead inspector actually smiled. We'll conduct a complete review, sir. You can count on it. They moved away, their voices fading as they headed to another section of the basement. Emma stayed frozen, afraid to move, afraid to breathe. How had Daniel done it? How had he transformed the nursery so completely? And where were Sophie's things? You can come out, Daniel said quietly, not turning around. Emma emerged from her hiding spot, trembling. How did you know you were there? He finally faced her, his expression unreadable. I asked you to come, though you were supposed to use the loading dock entrance to avoid being seen. I did, but how did you change everything? The work orders, the electrical equipment. The work orders are real, he said. I had them created 6 weeks ago, dated appropriately. The electrical work is real too. This corner did need updating. I simply expedited it last night. Last night, I had a crew work through the night. Everything you need, the chair, the supplies, they're in a storage unit 2 blocks away. After today, after the inspection passes, we'll set it up again. Better this time, more secure. Emma stared at him, overwhelmed. You did all this for a mother trying to protect her child, he finished. Yes. Why? The question escaped before she could stop it. Why do you care so much? For a moment, his professional mask slipped, revealing something raw and vulnerable underneath. Because I know what it's like to feel trapped, to have no good choices, to watch someone you love sacrifice everything just to survive. Your mother, among others. He paused, seeming to wrestle with something internal. Emma, there's something I need to tell you about why I was really here that first day pretending to be maintenance. Before he could continue, footsteps echoed on the stairs, multiple people approaching fast. Daniel stepped away from Emma, his CEO persona snapping back into place. Ms. Hayes, he said formally, louder than necessary. Thank you for checking on the electrical situation. Please inform Janet that this area remains off-limits to all staff until the work is complete. Richard Brennan rounded the corner, eyeing them both suspiciously. Ms. Hayes, you're not authorized to be in this area. I asked her to check something, Daniel said smoothly. Communication breakdown with management. My fault entirely. Brennan's eyes narrowed, looking between them. Emma felt exposed, like he could see through their deception to the truth underneath. Mr. Cross, with all due respect, having unauthorized personnel in a restricted area is a serious violation. You're absolutely right, Daniel agreed immediately. Ms. Hayes, please return to your station. We'll discuss proper protocols later. Emma nodded, not trusting her voice, and headed for the stairs. As she climbed, she heard Brennan say, She's the one with the medical accommodation, isn't she? The one you personally authorized. Is there a problem with accommodating employees' medical needs, Richard? Daniel's voice had cooled several degrees. No, sir, of course not. I just find it interesting. Emma didn't hear Daniel's response, but she could imagine it calm, controlled, giving nothing away. She emerged from the basement to find the main floor in chaos. The inspection team had spread throughout the store, checking everything from expiration dates to emergency exits. Employees scurried about, trying to look busy and compliant. "Where have you been?" Janet appeared at her elbow, face flushed with stress. "Sarah's been covering for 20 minutes. Mr. Cross asked me to check something in the basement," Emma said truthfully. Janet's expression shifted from anger to something more complicated. "He asked you, personally, about the electrical work, making sure employees knew to stay clear." "Right." Janet's tone suggested she didn't believe a word. "Back to your register," and Emma tried to be invisible for the rest of the day. But invisibility was impossible when Richard Brennan decided to observe the checkout process from her lane specifically. He stood behind her tablet in hand, watching every scan, every interaction, every smile. Emma felt like a specimen under a microscope. "You've been here 18 months, he said, reading from his tablet. "Multiple customer compliments, no significant errors. Yet you've had numerous irregular breaks recently." "Medical accommodation," Emma said quietly, scanning a customer's items without looking up. "Yes, I see that. Authorized by Mr. Cross personally. Unusual for a CEO to involve himself in individual employee accommodations." Emma said nothing, focusing on bagging groceries with mechanical precision. "What's the nature of your condition, if you don't mind me asking?" "I do mind," Emma said, finding courage in desperation. "Medical information is private." Brennan's lips thinned. "Of course, privacy. How convenient." He stayed for another 10 minutes, making notes, watching her every move. When he finally left, Emma's shirt was soaked with sweat. The customer she was serving, a young mother with a toddler throwing a tantrum, gave her a sympathetic look. "Corporate?" the woman asked. "Inspection," Emma confirmed. "They're the worst. Like vultures looking for any excuse to make trouble." The woman's toddler had escalated to full meltdown mode, screaming about candy. "Sorry about him, missed his nap." "It's okay," Emma said, meaning it. "Sometimes we all need to scream." The mother laughed, wrestling her child into the cart seat. "Ain't that the truth? You have kids." The question hit unexpectedly hard. "Yes, a daughter." "How old?" 3 months. "Oh, you're still in the thick of it then. Gets easier. Sort of. Different hard, maybe." The woman accepted her receipt, still fighting with her toddler. "Take care of yourself too, okay? Can't pour from an empty cup." Emma watched them leave, the mother's words echoing. Can't pour from an empty cup. But what happened when the cup had been empty so long you forgot what it felt like to be full? The inspection continued for 3 more hours. Richard Brennan seemed to be everywhere, questioning employees, checking protocols, making everyone nervous. Emma caught glimpses of Daniel occasionally, always surrounded by the inspection team or store management, his expression giving nothing away. At noon, during what should have been her lunch break, Janet pulled her aside. "Go home." "What?" "Mr. Cross's orders. You're too visible and Brennan's got a bee in his bonnet about you. Clock out, go home, get paid for the full shift. Come back tomorrow when this circus is over." Emma wanted to protest. She needed to be here to know what was happening, but Janet's expression brooked no argument. She gathered her things, avoiding eye contact with everyone, feeling like she was fleeing the scene of a crime. As she waited for the bus, her phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello, it's Daniel. Are you alone?" "At the bus stop." "Good, listen, the inspection's going to pass. No violations they can act on. But Richard Brennan's suspicious. He's going to dig into you, into your situation." Emma's stomach clenched. "What do I do?" "Nothing. Let me handle it." "But Emma, we need to talk." "Really talk? Can you meet me tonight after Sophie's asleep?" Every rational part of her screamed, no. Meeting him outside work alone was crossing a line that couldn't be uncrossed. But she heard herself say, "Where?" "There's a diner on 8th Street. Murphy's. 9 o'clock. I'll try." "Emma." His voice softened. I know this is complicated. I know you have no reason to trust me, but I promise I'm trying to help. People who help usually want something in return. You're right, I do want something. He paused. I want to tell you the truth about everything. The line went dead. Emma stood at the bus stop, phone in hand, wondering what truth could be worth all this elaborate deception. Mrs. Chen was delighted to see her return early. Sophie's been an angel, she reported, Sophie sleeping peacefully in the elderly woman's arms. Took her bottle, had a good burp, slept most of the morning. You've got a good one here. Thank you so much. Emma tried to pay her, but Mrs. Chen waved it away. Keep your money. Buy that baby some diapers. Besides, it was nice having company. These old arms remember how to hold a baby. After Mrs. Chen left, Emma sat in her tiny apartment. Sophie cradled against her chest and tried to make sense of the day. Daniel Cross had mobilized an entire construction crew overnight, falsified work orders, and risked his reputation to protect her secret. Why would anyone do that for a stranger, unless she wasn't a stranger? The thought nagged at her as she fed Sophie, bathed her, played with her during her alert period. Had they met before? She would remember meeting a billionaire CEO, wouldn't she? But there was something familiar about him, something she couldn't quite place. At 8:30, she called Mrs. Chen again. I hate to ask, but could you watch Sophie for just 2 hours? I have to handle something. Of course, dear. Bring her over. We'll watch Jeopardy together. She seems to like Alex Trebek's voice. Murphy's Diner was exactly what Emma expected. Worn vinyl booths, flickering neon, the smell of coffee that had been brewing too long. It was nearly empty at 9 on a Tuesday night. Just a few late-shift workers grabbing dinner and a homeless man nursing a single cup of coffee. Daniel was already there in a corner booth wearing jeans and a plain t-shirt that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe. He looked up when she entered, and something flashed across his face. Relief. Nervousness. Thank you for coming, he said, as she slid into the opposite seat. I can't stay long. I know, Sophie's with Mrs. Chen. At her surprised look, he added, I had to know you had safe childcare. I'm sorry if that seems intrusive. Everything about this is intrusive, Emma said, surprising herself with her bluntness. You've been watching me, investigating me, manipulating situations around me. I think I deserve to know why. You do. He signaled the waitress, who brought 2 cups of coffee without being asked. It started 6 months ago. I was doing what I call ground-level research, working undercover in my own stores to understand what was really happening, not what management reports told me. And you chose our store, not randomly. I was following a pattern of complaints, high turnover, low morale, multiple grievances that never seemed to get addressed. I wanted to know why. Emma wrapped her hands around the warm mug, needing something to anchor her. What does this have to do with me? Nothing at first. You were just another employee doing your job well despite the circumstances. But then I noticed things, how you never ate lunch, how you disappeared during breaks, how you looked. He paused, searching for words. Haunted, like you were carrying the weight of the world. Lots of people look like that. True, but not everyone sneaks into basements with baby supplies. Emma's cheeks burned. So, you followed me. I was concerned. I thought maybe you were selling supplies on the side. It happens more than you'd think, especially when people are desperate. But I wasn't. No. His voice softened. You were being a mother. In the most impossible circumstances, you were just trying to take care of your baby. They sat in silence for a moment. The homeless man at the counter coughed a harsh sound that echoed through the diner. The waitress refilled his coffee without being asked, a small kindness that nobody else noticed. I should have reported it, Daniel continued. Corporate policy is clear. It was dangerous for you and Sophie. If something had happened, a fire, an accident, the liability would have been enormous. But you didn't report it? No, because I saw myself, or rather, I saw my mother and myself 30 years ago. Different circumstances, same desperation, same impossible choices. Emma studied his face, looking for deception, manipulation, anything that would explain this elaborate charade. But all she saw was genuine pain, old but still sharp. "Tell me about her," she said quietly. Daniel smiled, sad and fond simultaneously. Maria Cross, immigrant from Colombia, spoke barely any English when she arrived. Pregnant alone, no family, no support. She cleaned offices at night, worked in a laundromat during the day, did seamstress work on weekends. I grew up in back rooms, storage closets, wherever she could hide me while she worked. That must have been hard. I didn't know it was hard. It was just life. I thought everyone's mother cried while counting pennies, trying to figure out if we could afford milk and bread. I thought everyone learned to be quiet, to be invisible, to never cause problems. Emma felt tears prick her eyes. It was too familiar, too close to her own reality. "She saved every penny for my education," Daniel continued. "Wore the same 3 dresses for years, ate 1 meal a day so I could have 3. When I got into Harvard on a full scholarship, she cried for a week. Happy tears, she said, but I knew better. They were tears of relief. Her sacrifice had meant something. She lived to see your success." Barely. She died of cancer 2 months before Crestmart went public. 2 months before I could really take care of her the way she'd taken care of me. The irony isn't lost on me. I built this empire to help people like her, but I couldn't help the one person who mattered most. The waitress approached with a pot of coffee, but Daniel waved her away. Emma realized she hadn't touched hers, too absorbed in his story. "So when you saw me with Sophie, I saw a chance at redemption maybe, or just a chance to help someone the way I wish someone had helped my mother. We had programs, employee assistance, child care subsidies, but nothing that would really solve your problem. Because single mothers with 3-month-olds don't fit into corporate policies." Exactly. Policies are designed for ideal situations, not real ones. They assume you have savings, family support, a partner options. They don't account for, he gestured vaguely, this being desperation, this being survival. They sat quietly again. The diner's clock ticked loudly, marking time Emma couldn't afford to waste. But she found herself reluctant to leave, to return to the crushing weight of her reality. "What happens now?" she asked. "Brennan's suspicious, Janet's suspicious, everyone's talking." "Let them talk. The inspection passed. Your job is safe. The basement arrangement can continue with better precautions." "But for how long? Sophie's getting bigger, more active. She won't stay quiet in a basket much longer. And what about when she starts crawling, walking? I can't hide a toddler in a basement." Daniel leaned forward. "I know. That's why I want to propose something. It's unconventional, possibly inappropriate, definitely complicated. But hear me out." Emma tensed. Here it comes, she thought. The catch, the price for all his help. Crestmart is launching a pilot program, on-site childcare for employees. Free for single parents, subsidized for others. Professional staff, proper facilities, regular inspections. Everything above board and legal. That sounds amazing, but it won't launch for 6 months. Construction, licensing, hiring, it all takes time. So in the interim, I want to offer you a different position. Executive assistant working remotely primarily. Same pay, actually better pay. Full benefits, flexible hours. You could work from home, be with Sophie. Emma stared at him. "I'm not qualified to be an executive assistant." "You're organized, detail-oriented, good with people, and excellent at working under pressure. You're more qualified than you think. People will talk. They'll say," she couldn't finish the sentence, "they'll say you got special treatment, that you're sleeping with the boss, that you didn't earn it." Daniel's voice was matter-of-fact. "They're already saying it, aren't they?" Emma nodded, miserable. "So let them talk. You'll know the truth. I'll know the truth. Sophie will have her mother. Isn't that worth more than gossip?" "Why?" Emma asked again. "Why go to all this trouble for us?" Daniel was quiet for a long moment, staring into his untouched coffee. When he looked up, his expression was more vulnerable than she'd ever seen it. because for the first time in years, I feel like I'm doing something that matters, not increasing stock prices or expanding markets, but actually helping someone. Because when I see you with Sophie, I remember that there's more to life than corporate success. Because he stopped seeming to wrestle with the words. Because you remind me that courage isn't about hostile takeovers or risky investments. It's about showing up every day when everything is against you, choosing love over easy, protecting what matters, even when it costs everything. The words hung between them, too heavy with meaning, too charged with possibility. Emma felt something shift in her chest, a dangerous warmth she couldn't afford. I should go, she said, standing abruptly. Sophie needs— Wait. He pulled out an envelope, sliding it across the table. Don't open it now, just consider it. Everything's explained inside. No pressure, no expectations, just options. Emma took the envelope, its weight suggesting multiple pages. Daniel, think about it, for Sophie. She nodded and left, walking quickly through the dark streets. The envelope burned in her pocket, full of possibility and complication. Behind her, through the diner window, she could see Daniel still sitting in the booth, alone with his cold coffee and whatever ghosts he carried. Back in her apartment, Sophie sleeping peacefully in her crib, Emma opened the envelope. Inside was a formal job offer, detailed and professional. The salary made her gasp, triple what she made now. There was also a handwritten note. Emma, this isn't charity or pity or anything inappropriate. This is business. I need someone I can trust, someone who understands what it means to fight for something, someone who won't be impressed by money or intimidated by power, someone real. The job is real, the need is real, the offer is real. Everything else, whatever else might or might not exist, is separate. Your daughter needs stability. You need opportunity. I need someone who sees through the corporate facade to what really matters. Think about it. D. Emma read the note 3 times, then sat in the dark apartment. Sophie's breathing the only sound. Outside, the city hummed with life, other people making their own impossible choices, fighting their own battles, carrying their own secrets. She thought about Daniel's mother, Maria, working 3 jobs while hiding her son. She thought about her own mother, dying too young, leaving her alone in a world that didn't care. She thought about Sophie, innocent and trusting, depending on her for everything. Most of all, she thought about Daniel's words. Courage isn't about hostile takeovers or risky investments. It's about showing up every day when everything is against you. Tomorrow she would have to decide. Tomorrow she would have to choose between the safety of familiar struggle and the risk of possibility. But tonight she held her daughter and allowed herself to imagine just for a moment a life where she didn't have to hide in basements, where Sophie could laugh freely, where survival wasn't the only goal. Outside her window, a siren wailed someone else's emergency, someone else's crisis. Emma closed her eyes and made a decision that would change everything, though she wouldn't admit it even to herself, until morning came with its harsh light and harder choices. The envelope lay on her threadbare coffee table, its corporate letterhead a foreign language in her cramped apartment, but the handwritten note that she folded carefully and placed in the drawer where she kept Ryan's ring and Sophie's hospital bracelet. Some things were too dangerous to leave in plain sight, especially things that might look like hope. Morning came too soon, bringing with it the weight of decision. Emma had barely slept, her mind churning through possibilities and consequences. Sophie woke at 5, hungry and wet, and Emma went through the familiar routine of feeding and changing her all while the envelope seemed to pulse with significance from across the room. She couldn't accept it, that much was clear. Taking such a position would confirm every whisper, every suspicious glance. She'd become the woman everyone assumed she was, someone who'd traded integrity for opportunity. But the alternative meant continuing this impossible charade, hiding Sophie in basements, living on the knife's edge of discovery and disaster. At 6:30, her phone rang. Janet, don't come in today, her supervisor said without preamble. Or tomorrow. Or, look, Emma, I'm calling as a friend, not your supervisor. What's happened? Richard Brennan filed a report, not about violations, he couldn't find any, but about irregularities in employee relationships. He's requesting a full investigation into your accommodation approval. Emma's blood chilled. What does that mean? It means HR will be crawling all over this. They'll interview everyone, review security footage, examine every interaction you've had with management, with Mr. Cross especially. Janet, I haven't done anything. I know. Janet's voice softened. But perception is everything in these situations. Take a few days, let things cool down. And Emma, if you have any other options, now might be the time to consider them. After Janet hung up, Emma sat in the dim morning light, Sophie playing with her own fingers in her lap. Any other options? The envelope seemed to grow larger, more insistent. She called the number from under the basement chair, the one Daniel had left for emergencies. It rang once. Emma. His voice was alert despite the early hour. They're investigating. Brennan reported irregularities. I know, I got the report at midnight. He paused. Are you okay? The question, simple and genuine, nearly broke her. When was the last time someone had asked if she was okay and actually wanted to know the answer? I don't know, she admitted. Janet told me not to come in. I can't afford to miss work. But if I show up, you'll be under a microscope. Every move scrutinized, every word analyzed. He sighed. I can fight this, but it'll take time, and it might get uglier before it gets better. Why is Brennan doing this? Because he's good at his job. He sees patterns, inconsistencies. A CEO personally intervening for a cashier, creating special accommodations, spending time in areas where executive presence isn't normal. He's drawing conclusions. The wrong conclusions. Are they? Daniel's question hung in the air, loaded with implication. Emma didn't know how to respond. Were Brennan's conclusions wrong? Daniel was helping her, yes. But why? What they had wasn't romantic, but it wasn't purely professional either. It existed in some undefined space between kindness and something more. I need to see you, Daniel said. Not at the diner, somewhere safe. Can Mrs. Chen watch Sophie? I can't keep imposing on her. Then bring Sophie. My office has a private entrance away from the main building. No one would see you. Every instinct screamed against it. Going to his office, bringing Sophie, crossing that professional boundary even further. But she needed answers, needed to understand what was happening and why. Now I'll send a car. No. The last thing she needed was to be seen getting into a corporate town car. I'll take the bus. Give me the address. An hour later, Emma stood outside a gleaming office tower, Sophie strapped to her chest in the worn carrier that had been a second-hand store find. The building stretched toward the sky, all glass and steel and intimidation. But true to his word, there was a side entrance, discreet and unmarked. Daniel met her there himself, dressed in jeans and a pullover, looking nothing like the corporate titan who commanded boardrooms. Thank you for coming, he said. Then his attention shifted to Sophie. And for bringing her, may I? He gestured towards Sophie, asking permission. Emma nodded, and he gently touched Sophie's tiny hand. Her daughter immediately grabbed his finger, holding tight with infant determination. Strong grip. He observed his face softening. Future CEO, maybe. Let's just focus on getting through today, Emma said, though something in her chest tightened at the sight of Sophie holding on to him so trustingly. His office was on the 40th floor, accessible by a private elevator that required a key code. When the doors opened, Emma stepped into a space that probably cost more than she'd make in a lifetime. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the entire city furniture that belonged in museums art she recognized from textbooks. But what caught her attention was the corner that had been hastily transformed into a makeshift nursery area, a portable crib, changing table, even a rocking chair. When did you? This morning, after your call. I thought Sophie might need. He trailed off suddenly, seeming uncertain. Is it too much? It was too much. Everything about this was too much. Emma felt tears threaten and blinked them back fiercely. Why are you doing this? Sit down, he said gently. Please. Emma settled into the rocking chair, Sophie beginning to fuss against her chest. Without asking, Daniel handed her a receiving blanket from the crib, soft, expensive, nothing like the threadbare ones she used at home. She draped it over herself and Sophie beginning to nurse, while Daniel turned toward the windows, giving them privacy. Brennan's investigation will be thorough, he said, speaking to the city view. He'll find the basement arrangement eventually. The overnight construction, the falsified timeline, I covered my tracks well, but not perfectly. When you're looking for something specific, you usually find it. You'll be ruined. No, embarrassed maybe. Scrutinized by the board, certainly, but not ruined. I have enough capital, literal and figurative, to weather this. But why should you have to? This is my problem. He turned, then his expression intense. Is it I made choices too? I could have followed protocol, reported the situation, let the system handle it. Instead, I chose to help. That makes this my problem too. Sophie finished nursing and Emma adjusted her clothing, lifting the baby to her shoulder to burp her. Daniel watched with an expression she couldn't read, longing maybe, or regret. You wanted children, she said, not a question but an observation. My wife did, ex-wife now, but the marriage was about merger potential, not love. When she realized I was more interested in quarterly reports than nursery plans, she found someone who shared her priorities. I'm sorry. Don't be. Catherine's happy now. 2 kids, house in Connecticut, husband who comes home for dinner. He smiled wryly. Everything I couldn't give her. Sophie burped a sound too large for such a tiny body, and both adults laughed. It broke the tension momentarily, reminding them that beyond corporate investigations and complicated relationships, there was still simple humanity. The job offer, Emma said carefully. Is it real? Everything about it is real. The position exists, the need is genuine. I do need someone I can trust, someone who understands what really matters. But people assume things anyway. They're assuming them now. At least this way you'd have financial security while they gossip. Emma stood pacing to the windows with Sophie. The city sprawled below, millions of people living their lives oblivious to the drama playing out in this tower. If I take it, I become exactly what they're saying I am, the single mother who slept her way to a better position. You become a woman who took an opportunity to provide for her child. Nothing more, nothing less. You don't believe that. You know how it would look. Daniel moved to stand beside her, careful to maintain appropriate distance. My mother cleaned this building, not this exact office, but this building 30 years ago. She'd bring me sometimes when she couldn't find anyone to watch me. I'd sit in the supply closet doing homework while she emptied trash cans and vacuumed carpets worth more than she'd make in a year. Emma said nothing, sensing there was more. One night, an executive found us. Not unlike Brennan finding you. He could have had her fired had me taken by social services. Instead, he offered her a different job. Secretary in his department, day shift, better pay, no more hiding her child. That's a beautiful story. It would be, except everyone assumed she'd earned it on her back. The whispers followed her for years. Other secretaries wouldn't eat lunch with her. Executives treated her like she was available because if she'd done it once. But she took the job anyway. Because gossip doesn't pay rent or buy groceries or keep the lights on, because pride is a luxury single mothers can't afford. What happened to her? In that job, she learned everything, watched, listened, absorbed how business worked. When I was old enough, she used her savings to start a small cleaning company, built it into a regional operation, sold it for enough to put me through Harvard without loans. And the executive who helped her, Thomas Brennan, Richard's father. Emma turned to stare at him. Mama. Richard Brennan's father. Richard doesn't know. Thomas died before telling him. But yes, the man currently investigating you for inappropriate relationships is the son of the man who saved my mother through what everyone assumed was an inappropriate relationship. I don't know what that is. Ironic cosmic justice. It's life. Messy and complicated and full of patterns we only see in hindsight. Daniel returned to his desk, pulling out a folder. But it's also why I know Richard won't let this go. He's trying to live up to his father's reputation for integrity, not knowing his father's greatest act of integrity was breaking the rules. Sophie had fallen asleep against Emma's chest, trusting and peaceful. Emma studied her daughter's face, seeing Ryan's nose, his stubborn chin. What would he want her to do? But she knew the answer. Ryan would want Sophie safe, secure, provided for. Everything else was secondary. If I take the job, she said slowly, what exactly would I be doing? Daniel's face lit up quickly, suppressed. Managing my personal schedule, coordinating with various departments, handling correspondence. But more than that, helping me remember why we do this work, keeping me grounded. You need a 23-year-old single mother to keep you grounded. I need someone who knows what it's like to count pennies, to choose between food and medicine, to work while sick, because missing a day means missing rent. Someone who won't let me forget that our decisions affect real people with real struggles. A corporate conscience, if you want to call it that. Emma walked back to the rocking chair, settling into it with Sophie. The motion soothed them both, a gentle rhythm that made thinking easier. When would it start? Monday, if you're ready. But Emma, there's something else. The investigation, it's going to get personal. They'll dig into your life, Ryan's death, everything. There's nothing to find. There's always something to find, even if it's just tragedy twisted into suspicion. Are you prepared for that? Was she? Emma thought about the past months, the exhaustion, the fear, the constant worry. She thought about Sophie in the basement surrounded by concrete and shadows. She thought about counting out exact change for formula skipping meals so Sophie could eat, wearing shoes held together with tape because new ones weren't in the budget. I've been living under investigation since Sophie was born, she said. Every choice scrutinized by poverty, every decision judged by necessity. At least this investigation comes with health insurance. Daniel laughed, surprised and genuine. That's one way to look at it. Mr. Cross, Daniel. If we're going to work together, it's Daniel. Daniel. The name still felt foreign on her tongue. What happens when they find out about the basement? About you helping me hide Sophie there? I'll handle it. Say I discovered the situation and was working to resolve it quietly without embarrassing the company or you. Spin it as compassionate leadership. And if they don't buy it, then I'll remind them that Crestmart's stock has risen 40% since I took over, that our employee satisfaction scores are industry leading, and that firing me would trigger a severance package that would fund a small country. Must be nice to have that kind of power. It's useful, he admitted, but power without purpose is just expensive emptiness. Meeting you, seeing Sophie, being reminded of my mother's struggle, it's given me purpose again. Before Emma could respond, his desk phone rang. He answered, his expression darkening as he listened. I see. When no, don't respond yet. I'll handle it. He hung up, turning to Emma with an expression she'd never seen before, cold fury controlled by will. What is it? Brennan's accelerating his investigation. He's subpoenaed security footage from the past 3 months. All of it. Emma's stomach dropped. 3 months of footage would show everything, her sneaking to the basement, the supplies, Sophie herself, potentially. He can't do that without cause. He's claiming employee safety concerns, says he has an anonymous tip about dangerous conditions being hidden from inspectors. Anonymous tip from who? Someone who wants you gone or wants me compromised, or both. Daniel moved quickly, decisively. You need to leave. Now. Take Sophie home, pack what you need for a few days. Can you stay with someone? I don't have anyone. Then I'll arrange a hotel, somewhere safe, comfortable. I can't afford Emma. He stopped her with a look. We're past that. This is my fight now, too. Let me protect you and Sophie while I handle Brennan. And if you can't handle him, then we go to Plan B, which is, I'm still working on it, but it will keep you and Sophie safe. That's all that matters. Emma stood adjusting Sophie in the carrier. I should refuse. I should walk away from all of this, find another job, another solution. But I'm tired of fighting alone, and Sophie deserves better than a basement, even a nice one. Daniel moved toward her, stopping just close enough that she could smell his cologne cedar and something clean. You're not alone anymore. Whatever happens with Brennan, with the investigation, with everything, you and Sophie aren't alone. Don't make promises you can't keep. I don't. He reached out hesitating, then gently touched Sophie's head. I failed my mother by succeeding too late to help her. I failed my marriage by choosing work over family. I won't fail this. Emma wanted to believe him. Standing in his office, surrounded by evidence of his success with Sophie, safe and sleeping between them, she almost could. But life had taught her that promises were just words, and words were cheaper than baby formula. I'll go pack, she said, stepping back. Call me when you know something. Emma. He stopped her at the door. Whatever Brennan finds, whatever story he constructs, remember the truth. You're a mother protecting her child. I'm a CEO trying to help an employee. Everything else is noise. But as Emma left the building, Sophie stirring against her chest, she wondered if the truth was really that simple. The way Daniel had looked at Sophie, the gentleness in his touch, the pain in his voice when he spoke of failure, none of that was purely professional. And the way her heart had stuttered when he'd stood close, the comfort she'd felt in his presence, the dangerous hope building in her chest, that wasn't purely professional either. The bus ride home was a blur of anxiety and planning. She made mental lists, what to pack, what Sophie would need, how to explain this to Mrs. Chen. The elderly woman would worry, would ask questions Emma couldn't answer. Her phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. Car will be there at 3. Driver's name is Marcus. He's safe. 3 hours to pack a life. 3 hours to pretend this was just a temporary disruption, not a complete upheaval of everything she'd built, meager as it was. Her apartment looked different somehow, already feeling less like home and more like a way station. She packed methodically Sophie's things first, then her own few possessions. The wedding photo of her and Ryan went into the suitcase wrapped in one of Sophie's blankets. His ring, which she still wore on a chain around her neck, felt heavier than usual. What would you do? She asked the empty room as if Ryan could answer. Would you trust him? Would you take the risk? But Ryan had been gone for 6 months now, and his voice in her head was fading, replaced by the immediate demands of survival. A knock at the door made her jump. Too early to be the driver, she peered through the peephole to see Mrs. Chen holding a casserole dish. I made too much lasagna, the elderly woman announced when Emma opened the door. Thought you could use, oh honey, are you going somewhere? The suitcase was visible behind her, obvious and damning. Just for a few days, Emma said carefully. Work thing. Mrs. Chen's eyes sharpened. She might be old, but she wasn't naive. That handsome man who's been calling on you, is he good to you? He's my boss, or will be. It's complicated. Life is complicated, but is he good to you? Emma thought about the basement nursery, the food he'd left, the protection he was offering now. He's trying to help. That's not what I asked. Yes, Emma admitted. He's good to us. To Sophie and me. Mrs. Chen nodded, satisfied. Then you go. Do what you need to do. But remember, honey, sometimes help comes with strings. Make sure you know what they are before you get tangled. She left the lasagna and a kiss on Sophie's forehead, and Emma added the dish to her pile of things to pack. Real food made with care. Another kindness in a world that had shown her too few. At exactly 3 o'clock, a black sedan pulled up outside. The driver, Marcus, was older, professional, with kind eyes that reminded Emma of her father. Ms. Hayes, Mr. Cross asked me to ensure you and your daughter are comfortable. There's a car seat already installed. The car seat was brand new, high-end, exactly the right size for Sophie. Emma didn't ask how Daniel knew what to get. The man who'd researched her enough to know about Mrs. Chen had certainly researched car seat safety. The hotel wasn't what Emma expected. Instead of some gleaming high-rise, Marcus drove them to a modest but clean extended stay place in a quiet neighborhood. "Mr. Cross thought you'd be more comfortable here," Marcus explained. "Less conspicuous. The rooms under my name paid through the company's emergency housing fund. All legitimate, all above board." The room was actually a sweet small kitchen, separate bedroom, everything Emma needed to care for Sophie. The refrigerator was stocked with formula baby food Sophie wasn't quite ready for, and actual groceries. Adult food. The kind Emma used to eat when eating was about more than just survival. On the counter was another note from Daniel. "Everything here is yours. No strings, no expectations, just safety while I sort this out. Order room service, rest, let Sophie play somewhere other than a basement. You both deserve that. D." Emma sank onto the couch, Sophie in her arms, and let herself cry for the first time in weeks. Not from sadness or fear, but from the overwhelming relief of being cared for, even temporarily. Someone else was fighting the battle, at least for now. Someone else was making decisions, handling problems, standing between her and disaster. Her phone rang. "Daniel, are you settled?" "Yes, Daniel, this is too much. It's temporary, a few days at most. I've got a meeting with Brennan tomorrow. My lawyers will be there. We're going to resolve this." "How?" "By reminding him that investigating employees without cause is harassment, that targeting single mothers is discrimination, and that I have very expensive lawyers who would love to make an example of him. He'll fight back. Let him. I've been fighting corporate battles for 15 years. This one actually matters." Sophie gurgled in Emma's arms, reaching for the phone as if she recognized Daniel's voice. "Sophie says thank you," Emma said softly, "for everything. Tell Sophie she's welcome. And Emma, try to sleep tonight, real sleep. Marcus will be outside if you need anything, but you're safe. Both of you." After he hung up, Emma fed Sophie, bathed her in the suite's clean tub with actual hot water that didn't run out after 2 minutes, and dressed her in fresh pajamas from the suitcase. She ordered room service, a real meal with vegetables and protein, and even dessert, and ate while Sophie played on a blanket on the floor, surrounded by space and safety. That night, lying in a bed that didn't sag in the middle with Sophie secure in the portable crib beside her, Emma allowed herself to imagine this was her real life. That tomorrow she'd wake up without fear, without exhaustion, without the constant calculation of impossible choices. Her phone lit up with one final text from Daniel. "Brennan backed down. Threat of lawsuit too risky. Investigation suspended pending review. You can come home tomorrow, but the job offer stands. Monday, if you're ready." Emma read it 3 times, then looked at Sophie sleeping peacefully in the glow of the nightlight. Monday, a new job, a new start, a new set of complications, but also possibility, stability, hope. She made her decision then, in the darkness of a hotel room paid for by a man who understood desperation because he'd lived it, who offered help because he knew what it meant to need it. "We're taking the job, baby girl," she whispered to Sophie, "and whatever comes with it, whatever people say, we'll handle it, because we're fighters, you and me, and now maybe we don't have to fight alone." Outside, the city hummed with its endless energy, but inside the suite, Emma and Sophie were cocooned in temporary peace. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new judgments, new struggles. But tonight, for the first time in months, they were simply safe. The message she sent to Daniel was brief. "Monday, we'll be ready." His response came immediately. "So will I." Monday arrived, wrapped in fog, the city shrouded in gray that matched Emma's mood. She stood before the mirror in her apartment, wearing the only professional outfit she owned, a black blazer from Goodwill and slacks that were slightly too long. Sophie watched from her bouncer, babbling at her own reflection in the closet door. "Your mom's about to walk into a lion's den," Emma told her daughter, adjusting the blazer for the 10th time. "But at least it's a well-paying lion's den." Mrs. Chen had agreed to watch Sophie during work hours, refusing any payment beyond the promise of daily Sophie visits. "Babies keep me young," she'd insisted, though Emma suspected loneliness was the real reason. Either way, it was a blessing Emma couldn't afford to question. The Crestmart corporate office occupied 3 floors of the tower she'd visited the previous week. The main entrance bustled with employees in expensive suits, their purposeful strides making Emma feel like she was moving in slow motion. She'd been instructed to report to human resources first, then to Daniel's office. The order mattered, establish the official relationship before anything else. The HR director, a woman named Patricia, with perfectly styled hair and suspicious eyes, walked Emma through paperwork with clinical efficiency. "You understand this is a probationary position," she said, sliding another form across the desk. "Mr. Cross has unusual standards for his personal assistants. The last 3 didn't make it past the first month." "What happened to them?" Patricia's smile was sharp. "They forgot that being close to power isn't the same as having it. I trust you won't make that mistake." The warning was clear, but Emma had survived worse than office politics. She signed where indicated, agreed to terms she barely understood, and accepted the company badge that would be her new identity: Emma Hayes, executive assistant to the CEO. Daniel's office felt different in Monday morning light, more intimidating, more formal. He was on a call when she arrived, pacing before the windows while speaking in rapid-fire terms about market projections and quarterly expectations. He held up a finger 1 minute, and Emma settled uncertainly into a chair. His assistant's desk was outside in the anteroom, but he'd asked her to meet him privately first. Looking at him now in his element, commanding and controlled, Emma wondered what she'd gotten herself into. This wasn't the man who'd sat on a basement floor making faces at Sophie. This was the CEO whose decisions affected thousands. He ended the call and turned to her, his expression softening slightly. "You came. I said I would. People say a lot of things when they're desperate. Following through is different." He moved to his desk, pulling out a tablet. "Before we start, I need you to understand something. Out there," he gestured toward the door, "we maintain strict professionalism. No references to Sophie, to the basement, to anything personal. Your job is real. The work is demanding, and you'll earn every penny of your salary. Clear. Crystal. Good. Your desk is outside. Margaret, she's leaving today, retiring, will train you on the basic systems. The rest you'll learn as we go. Any questions? Why did the last 3 assistants leave?" Daniel's expression darkened slightly. "Because they thought the job was about being near me rather than supporting the work. They wanted proximity to power, not responsibility. I don't think you'll have that problem. Because I have Sophie to think about. Because you understand what actually matters." He paused, then added more quietly, "How is she?" "Good. Mrs. Chen is watching her. She's safe. If you need to leave emergency feeding anything, you go. No questions asked. That's non-negotiable." Emma nodded, throat tight with emotion she couldn't afford to show. Not here, not in this gleaming office where everything had a price and everyone was watching. Margaret turned out to be a formidable woman in her 60s who'd been with the company since its founding. She looked Emma up and down with the kind of assessment that missed nothing. "Single mother, right?" she said without preamble. "Good. They make the best assistants. Already used to impossible demands and no sleep." The morning flew by in a blur of passwords, protocols, and systems Emma pretended to understand. Margaret's training style was sink or swim, throwing information at Emma like weapons. "He takes his coffee black, no exceptions. First meeting is always at 7:30. He'll already be here when you arrive. Don't bother organizing his desk. He has a system that looks like chaos but works for him. Never ever put someone through to his direct line without clearing it first. His ex-wife will try, she's persistent, but unless it's about their divorce settlement, she doesn't get through." "They don't have children." Margaret's expression softened slightly. "No, that's part of why they're divorced. She wanted them. He wanted the company more. Now he has the company and she has a new family. Everyone got what they wanted, I suppose. But Emma heard the doubt in her voice, the suggestion that maybe nobody had gotten what they really wanted. At lunch, Emma escaped to the bathroom to pump milk for Sophie, hiding in a stall with her manual pump, trying to be silent. Her body didn't care about her new job or its demands. Sophie needed to eat, which meant Emma needed to maintain her supply. The executive bathroom was marble and gold fixtures, making her task feel even more surreal. When she returned to her desk, there was a key card on it with a note, Executive Lactation Room, 15th floor, private, comfortable, equipped, D. Emma looked toward his office, but the door was closed. Another meeting in progress. He'd known. Of course he'd known. The man who'd arranged a basement nursery wouldn't overlook this detail. The lactation room was everything. The note promised soft lighting, comfortable chair, hospital-grade pump, even a small refrigerator for storage. Emma sank into the chair and cried just for a moment, overwhelmed by the simple dignity of privacy for this basic need. The afternoon brought a parade of executives, each eyeing Emma with varying degrees of curiosity and calculation. She was a mystery to them. Where had she come from? Why had Daniel chosen her? What was her angle? "You're the one from the store," said James from marketing, his tone making it clear this wasn't a compliment. "Register 7, right?" "Yes." "Interesting career progression." His smile was predatory. "From scanning groceries to managing the CEO's schedule. That's quite a leap." "Mr. Cross values diverse perspectives," Emma replied, proud of how steady her voice remained. "I'm sure he does." James left with a smirk that made Emma's skin crawl. By 4 o'clock, Emma's head was spinning with information. Her feet ached from the heels she wasn't used to wearing, and she desperately missed Sophie. She'd checked her phone obsessively, but Mrs. Chen's updates were reassuring. Sophie had eaten well, napped on schedule, even laughed at the elderly woman's attempts at peekaboo. Daniel emerged from his office at 4:30 looking tired but determined. "How's your first day?" "Overwhelming," Emma admitted. "It gets easier, or you get better at managing the overwhelm. Same result." He paused at her desk. "I have a dinner meeting at 7. You don't need to stay, but I'll need the Morrison files prepared for tomorrow morning. I'll have them ready." "Emma," he lowered his voice, "you don't have to prove anything to anyone. You're here because you're capable, not because I know." She cut him off, aware of eyes watching from other desks. "I'll have the files ready." He nodded and left, and Emma turned back to her computer, determined to master at least this one task. The Morrison files turned out to be a complex acquisition proposal full of financial projections and market analyses that might as well have been written in another language. But Emma had survived on 3 hours of sleep for months. She could survive this too. At 6, when the office had largely emptied, she finally finished organizing the files. Her eyes burned from staring at the screen, and her back ached from tension. She hadn't realized she'd been carrying. As she prepared to leave, she noticed Daniel's office light was still on. He was standing at the windows again, phone to his ear, but his posture was different, defeated almost. She could hear fragments of the conversation. "I understand your position, but the board needs to see—" "No, that's not acceptable. We had an agreement." Emma gathered her things quietly, not wanting to intrude, but as she waited for the elevator, Daniel appeared beside her. "I thought you'd left," he said. "Just finishing up. Are you okay?" He laughed, but it was bitter. "The board's questioning my judgment. Apparently hiring you was the final straw in a series of unconventional decisions. I could resign, make this easier for you." "No." The word was sharp, immediate. "That's exactly what they want. Proof that I can be controlled, managed, contained." He jabbed the elevator button with unnecessary force. "I built this company from nothing. Now they want to tell me how to run it." The elevator arrived and they stepped in together. Emma was acutely aware of his presence in the small space, the way his cologne mixed with the stress radiating from him. Sophie's first word will probably be spreadsheet at this rate. she said, trying to lighten the mood. It worked. Daniel's expression softened, a real smile replacing the bitter twist of his lips. Could be worse. Mine was apparently overtime. Really, according to my mother, she was working so much I heard it more than my own name. They reached the lobby and Daniel walked her to the door. You did well today. I know it wasn't easy. None of this is easy, but easy doesn't pay for Sophie's future. No, he agreed, it doesn't. Outside, the fog had lifted, replaced by sharp autumn air that bit at Emma's cheeks. She turned to say goodbye, but Daniel was looking at her with an expression she couldn't read. What? Nothing, just be careful going home. The neighborhood around your apartment isn't safe after dark. I've been managing that neighborhood for 2 years. I know, but now you have something to lose. Emma wanted to argue that she'd always had something to lose Sophie, but understood what he meant. Now she had hope, possibility, a chance at something better. That made her a target in ways she hadn't been when she was just another struggling single mother. The bus ride home was different now that she could afford a taxi, but chose not to take one. She needed the transition time, the gradual shift from executive assistant back to mother. By the time she reached her apartment, she'd shed the professional persona like an uncomfortable coat. Mrs. Chen was dozing in the rocking chair, Sophie alert in her arms, gumming a soft toy with determined concentration. She's been perfect, Mrs. Chen reported, transferring the baby to Emma's eager arms. Missed her mama around 3, but we managed. Emma breathed in Sophie's scent, feeling her world right itself. Thank you. I don't know how to repay. Nonsense, this little one is payment enough. Same time tomorrow, after Mrs. Chen left. Emma sat with Sophie, telling her about the day in soft whispers. Mommy has a real office now, with a computer and everything. And guess what? There's a special room just for pumping milk for you. Can you believe that? Sophie grabbed her mother's face with both hands, as if to say she could believe anything as long as Emma was there. That night, after Sophie was asleep, Emma sat at her laptop researching. If she was going to succeed in this job, she needed to understand more than just scheduling and filing. She needed to understand the business, the players, the politics. The Morrison acquisition Daniel was working on could make or break the company's expansion plans. The board was divided, with Richard Brennan's father-in-law leading the opposition. Of course, even removed from direct investigation, Brennan's influence lingered like smoke. Her phone buzzed. Daniel, stop researching. You need sleep more than you need to understand corporate structure. Emma stared at the message. How did he know? Then she noticed the company laptop was probably monitored. Everything corporate issued would be. Hard to sleep when I don't understand what I'm supposed to be helping with, she texted back. Tomorrow, I'll explain tomorrow. Rest now. But sleep didn't come easily. Emma lay in the dark, Sophie's breathing the only sound, and wondered what she'd started. This wasn't just a job anymore, it was something else, something complicated and dangerous and full of possibility she didn't want to name. Tuesday brought new challenges. A board member showed up unannounced, demanding to see Daniel immediately. Emma had to balance firmness with deference, protecting Daniel's time while not offending someone who could destroy her with a phone call. I'm sorry, Mr. Whitman, but Mr. Cross is in a conference call with Tokyo. I can schedule you for, little girl. Whitman interrupted, his voice dripping condescension. I was on this board before you were born. I don't get scheduled. I get seen. Emma felt heat rise in her cheeks, but kept her voice steady. Then I'm sure you understand the importance of the Tokyo call. The Asian market won't wait for anyone, not even board members. Whitman's eyes narrowed. You're the charity case, aren't you? The cashier Daniel decided to save. I'm Mr. Cross's executive assistant. Would you like me to see if he can break from his call, or would you prefer a scheduled meeting where he can give you his full attention? They stared at each other for a long moment before Whitman backed down. 1 hour. Tell him it's about Morrison. After he left, Emma's hands shook. She'd just faced down a billionaire board member, The girl who'd been hiding her baby in a basement had told a powerful man no. Daniel emerged from his office having heard the exchange. "Well done. I might have just made an enemy." "You definitely made an enemy, but you also showed you can't be bullied. That matters more." The day progressed with small victories and minor disasters. Emma slowly found her rhythm, learning to anticipate Daniel's needs, to read the subtle cues that indicated urgency versus routine. She discovered he forgot to eat when stressed, so she started ordering lunch without asking. He noticed but said nothing, cleaning his plate while reviewing contracts. At 3, Emma slipped away to the lactation room, relief flooding through her as she pumped. Her body didn't care about corporate politics or board dynamics. It only knew Sophie needed food, and Emma would provide it. When she returned, there was a crisis. The Morrison deal was falling apart. The seller had received a better offer from a competitor, and Daniel was furious in the cold, controlled way that was somehow more frightening than shouting. "Get Richardson on the line," he commanded. "Then Thompson. Then prepare a press release. We're walking away." "Walking away?" Emma questioned before she could stop herself. Daniel looked at her sharply. "You have a better idea." She should have stayed quiet, but something in his expression, frustration mixed with desperation, made her speak. "My husband used to say that sometimes the best way to get what you want is to show you don't need it. Your husband was in construction, not corporate acquisitions. He was also usually right about people." Emma stood her ground. "Morrison wants you to chase, makes him feel important. What if you didn't?" Daniel stared at her for a long moment, then laughed, sharp and unexpected. "Out of the mouths of babes, or their mothers." He returned to his office. "Cancel those calls. Set up a press conference for tomorrow. We're announcing a new initiative, organic growth, instead of acquisitions. But the board will be furious. But sometimes, Ms. Hayes, the best way to win is not to play." The rest of the afternoon was a whirlwind of preparations. Emma coordinated with PR, arranged the venue, prepared briefing materials. She was so absorbed that she didn't notice the time until her phone rang. "Mrs. Chen. Sophie's running a fever, not high, but she's fussy." Emma's world narrowed to those words. Fever, Sophie. She stood grabbing her things without thought. "I have to go," she told Daniel, who'd emerged to discuss the press conference. "What's wrong?" "Sophie's sick. I'm sorry, I know this is important, but go." He was already moving, grabbing his jacket. "I'll drive you." "You don't have to. Emma, go. We'll argue about it in the car." The drive to her apartment was tense, Emma calling Mrs. Chen for updates, while Daniel navigated traffic with aggressive precision. Sophie's fever wasn't dangerous, 100.2, but for a 3-month-old, any fever was concerning. They found Sophie crying in Mrs. Chen's arms, her little face red and miserable. Emma took her immediately, feeling the heat radiating from the small body. "How long has she been like this?" "About an hour. I gave her a bottle, but she didn't want much." Daniel was already on his phone. "I need Dr. Morrison at Park Avenue Pediatrics. Tell him it's urgent." He looked at Emma. "He's the best in the city. We'll take her now." "I can't afford—" "Emma, please, let me do this." She wanted to argue to maintain independence, but Sophie whimpered against her chest, and pride became irrelevant. They went to the prestigious pediatric clinic where Dr. Morrison, kind-eyed and grandfatherly, examined Sophie with gentle expertise. "Ear infection," he pronounced. "Common at this age. Antibiotics will clear it up quickly." Relief made Emma's knees weak. Daniel steadied her with a hand on her elbow, natural and supportive. "First child?" Dr. Morrison asked. "Yes." "The first fever is always terrifying, but she's healthy, well cared for. You're doing everything right." As they waited for the prescription, Sophie finally calm in Emma's arms, Daniel sat beside them in the waiting room. Other parents glanced at them curiously. They looked like a family, Emma realized. The thought was dangerous, seductive, impossible. "Thank you," she said quietly. You don't have to thank me for basic human decency. It's not basic. Most people aren't responsible for putting you in a position where you had to hide your sick child in a basement while working. The guilt in his voice was sharp, unexpected. Emma shifted Sophie to one arm, reaching out to touch his hand with her free one. You didn't put me there. Life did. You're the one getting us out. He turned his hand over fingers briefly interlacing with hers before pulling away. The press conference tomorrow we should postpone. You need to be with Sophie. No, this is important for the company, for your position with the board. I'll figure it out. Emma, this is my job. Let me do it. That night, Emma stayed up with Sophie administering medicine, monitoring her temperature, singing soft lullabies when she fussed. The antibiotics worked quickly. By morning, the fever had broken, and Sophie was herself again, grabbing at toys and babbling happily. Mrs. Chen arrived early, prepared for a sick baby, delighted to find Sophie recovered. Babies bounce back fast, she said sagely. Unlike their mothers, you look exhausted. Emma had caught maybe 2 hours of sleep, but adrenaline would carry her through. She dressed carefully, the black suit again, but with a new confidence. She'd faced down a board member, contributed to strategy, handled a crisis. She could handle a press conference. The venue was packed with reporters, all sensing blood in the water. The Morrison acquisition had been highly publicized. Walking away would be seen as weakness or strength, depending on how Daniel spun it. Emma stood in the wings, tablet in hand, watching Daniel command the room. He was magnificent, controlled, passionate, articulating a vision of organic growth that made the Morrison deal seem like a distraction from true purpose. Crestmart wasn't built on acquisitions, he said. It was built on understanding what communities need and providing it. We've lost sight of that, chasing growth for growth's sake. Today, we return to our roots. Questions flew, some hostile, some intrigued. Daniel handled them all with ease, but Emma saw the tension in his shoulders, the way his hand clenched when a reporter brought up board opposition. Then disaster struck. Richard Brennan himself appeared, having somehow gained access to the press area. Mr. Cross, he called out, his voice carrying over the crowd. Is it true that your new direction is being influenced by personal relationships rather than business acumen? The room went silent, cameras swinging between Brennan and Daniel. Emma felt exposed, even hidden in the wings. Daniel's expression could have frozen fire. Mr. Brennan, I wasn't aware you'd joined the press corps. Do you have a question, or are you just here to make insinuations? I'm here as a concerned shareholder. The board has questions about your recent decisions, including your hiring practices. Then the board can address those questions in the boardroom, not through ambush journalism. Daniel's voice was steel. But since you're here, let me be clear. Every decision I make is for the good of this company. Every hire, every strategy, every choice. If the board disagrees, they're welcome to find a CEO who'll be their puppet. I am not that man. He turned back to the legitimate reporters, dismissing Brennan with brutal effectiveness, but the damage was done. The questions turned personal, probing, focused on Daniel's judgment rather than corporate strategy. Emma made a decision. She stepped out from the wings, walking directly to Daniel's side. Every eye in the room tracked her movement. Mr. Cross, she said clearly, professionally, your 3 o'clock is here. There was no 3 o'clock, but it gave him an out. Daniel took it smoothly. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time. Full details of our new initiative will be released this afternoon. They left together, ignoring the shouted questions, maintaining professional distance until they were safely in the elevator. That was risky, Daniel said. Brennan made it personal. Sometimes the best response is to remind them it's just business. Is it just business? The elevator doors opened before she could answer, delivering them to the executive floor. But the question lingered between them, unanswered and dangerous. The afternoon brought fallout. Board members called, demanded explanations. The stock dipped, then recovered, then dipped again. Daniel handled it all with cold efficiency, but Emma saw the cost, the tightness around his eyes, the way he pushed food around his plate without eating. At 5, he told her to go home. Sophie needs you. Sophie's fine. You're the one who looks like you need... She stopped catching herself before the sentence turned too personal. What do I need, Emma? The question hung between them, loaded with possibility. Emma thought of safe answers, professional answers, but what came out was someone to remind you that winning isn't everything if you lose yourself in the process. He stared at her for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. My mother used to say something similar. Your mother sounds like she was wise. She was. She also warned me that success without connection was just expensive loneliness. Were you listening? I thought I was. Built a company focused on community, on connection. But somewhere along the way, I forgot to apply that to my own life. Emma wanted to reach out to offer comfort, but the space between them felt charged, dangerous. It's not too late, isn't it? He gestured at the office, the trappings of success that seemed more like prison bars. I'm 42, divorced, fighting a board that wants me out, and the only real conversation I've had in months is with a woman I'm not allowed to really know. Not allowed. You work for me. There are boundaries, lines that can't be crossed without destroying everything. Emma knew he was right, but something rebellious rose in her. So we maintain boundaries. We're professional. We do our jobs. Yes, but Sophie doesn't work for you. Daniel looked confused. What? You want connection? Real human connection. Come have dinner with us. Not as my boss, not as CEO, just as Daniel, who helped a desperate mother and might need some help himself. It was beyond inappropriate, but Emma was tired of appropriate. Appropriate had her hiding in basements. Appropriate had her counting pennies while working full-time. Appropriate was another word for accepting less than you deserved. Emma, Sophie's on antibiotics. I'm making pasta. Nothing fancy, nothing that crosses lines. Just food and conversation with someone who understands what it's like to watch your mother sacrifice everything. She left before he could respond, before sanity could reassert itself. All the way home she wondered what she'd done, what door she'd opened that might not close again. At 7:30, as Emma was feeding Sophie pureed sweet potatoes that ended up more on the baby than in her, there was a knock at the door. Daniel stood in her hallway, having traded his suit for jeans and a sweater, holding a bottle of wine and looking uncertain. I brought wine, then remembered your nursing, then didn't know what else to bring. You brought yourself. That's enough. He entered her tiny apartment, and Emma saw him taking in the details, the second-hand furniture, the water stain on the ceiling, Sophie's corner, with its carefully arranged toys and books. Not judging, just observing. It's not much, Emma said, suddenly self-conscious. It's everything, he replied, watching Sophie bang her spoon against the high chair tray with delight. It's a home. Dinner was simple pasta with marinara salad bread from the bakery down the street. Daniel insisted on helping chopping vegetables with surprising skill, while Emma managed Sophie and the stove. They worked in comfortable synchronization, as if they'd done this before. You cook, Emma observed. Learned in college, cheaper than meal plans, and it reminded me of helping my mother. He paused in his chopping. She'd make elaborate Colombian dishes with whatever was on sale, made poverty taste like abundance. They ate while Sophie played in her bouncer, the conversation flowing from childhood memories to books to dreams deferred. Daniel was different here in her space, softer, more real, the corporate armor set aside. What did you want to be? He asked. Before life intervened, a teacher, elementary school. I loved the idea of showing kids that learning could be magic. It's not too late. It's not exactly early either. Single mom, no degree bills that never stop coming. The company has education benefits. Full tuition assistance for employees pursuing degrees. Emma looked at him sharply. Is that why you hired me to fix my life? I hired you because you're competent, insightful, and don't let me get away with bullshit. The fact that it might also give you opportunities is secondary. Sophie fussed, and Daniel surprised Emma by reaching for her naturally. "May I?" Emma nodded, and he lifted Sophie with practiced ease, settling her against his shoulder. Sophie immediately grabbed his sweater, babbling contentedly. "You're good with her." "I wanted this," he said quietly, swaying slightly to soothe Sophie. "Catherine and I tried for years. Tests, treatments, scheduled intimacy that killed any actual intimacy. When it didn't happen, she blamed me for not wanting it enough, and I blamed her for wanting it too much. Truth was, we were both just scared of failing at one more thing." Emma felt the pain in her heart, on his words, the loss of possibilities. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. If things had worked out with Catherine, I wouldn't be here." "And where is here exactly?" He looked at her over Sophie's head, his expression open and vulnerable. "I don't know, but for the first time in years, I want to find out." The moment stretched between them, full of unspoken things. Then Sophie spit up on Daniel's expensive sweater, breaking the spell with reality. "Oh God, I'm sorry." Emma reached for a towel, but Daniel was laughing. "She's marking her territory. Can't say I blame her." He cleaned himself up with easy efficiency, still holding Sophie. "This is the most honest feedback I've gotten in years." They settled on the couch after dinner, Sophie drowsy in Daniel's arms, while Emma curled in the opposite corner, maintaining careful distance. The wine sat unopened on the counter, a symbol of paths not taken. "The board's going to force a vote," Daniel said eventually. "My leadership, my decisions. Brennan's leading the charge. When, next month, I need to show results before then prove the new direction is right. You will. Your confidence is touching if misplaced." Emma shifted closer, drawn by his dejection. "My confidence is based on observation. You see what others miss. You understand ground-level reality, not just spreadsheet projections. That's rare in leadership." "Is it enough?" "It was enough to see me, to see Sophie, when everyone else just saw problems or didn't see us at all." Daniel looked down at Sophie, now fully asleep, her tiny hand still clutching his sweater. "She trusts so easily." "Babies know who's safe. It's adults who forget how to tell." Their eyes met, and Emma felt that dangerous warmth again, stronger now in the intimacy of her apartment, with Sophie sleeping between them like a bridge and a barrier simultaneously. "I should go," Daniel said, but didn't move. "You should." Emma agreed, not moving either. They sat in the gathering darkness, the only light coming from the street outside, filtering through thin curtains. Sophie breathed between them, soft and trusting, while the city hummed its nighttime song. Finally, Daniel stood, transferring Sophie to Emma with infinite care. Their hands brushed in the exchange, and Emma felt the contact like electricity. "Thank you," he said, "for dinner, for this, for reminding me why I started Crestmart in the first place, which was to build something that mattered, to create community, connection, possibility. Somewhere along the way, it became about stock prices and market share, but this," he gestured at the small apartment at Sophie, at Emma herself, "this is what matters." He left then, and Emma stood at her window, watching him disappear into the night. Sophie stirred in her arms, making soft baby noises that sounded like contentment. "We're in trouble, baby girl," Emma whispered, "the kind of trouble that changes everything." But as she prepared Sophie for bed, she realized she wasn't afraid. For the first time since Ryan died, since Sophie was born, since the world had collapsed and rebuilt itself around survival, Emma felt something dangerous and wonderful. The next morning arrived with devastating news. Emma had just settled at her desk when Patricia from HR appeared, her expression grave behind designer glasses. "We need to talk," she said, glancing meaningfully at Daniel's closed office door. "Privately." They went to a conference room, the kind with frosted glass that suggested confidentiality while ensuring visibility. Patricia slid a folder across the table. "There's been a complaint, anonymous but detailed, about your relationship with Mr. Cross." Emma's stomach plummeted, but she kept her voice steady. What kind of complaint? The kind that includes photographs. Patricia opened the folder revealing grainy images Daniel entering her apartment building last night, the two of them in his car during Sophie's fever incident, Emma leaving the hotel he'd arranged during the investigation. These prove nothing inappropriate, Emma said, though her hands trembled slightly. They prove enough to raise questions. The board has called an emergency ethics review. You're suspended effective immediately pending investigation. But I haven't done anything wrong. Patricia's expression softened slightly. I know how these things go, Emma. Right or wrong doesn't matter when perception is involved. My advice, resign quietly. Take a severance package. Move on. I can't afford to move on. You can't afford not to. This will get ugly. They'll dig into everything: your husband's death, your financial situation, your daughter. Do you really want Sophie dragged into this? The mention of Sophie hit like a physical blow. Emma thought of her daughter, innocent and trusting, becoming fodder for corporate gossip and board politics. How long do I have to decide? 24 hours. After that, the formal investigation begins. Emma left the building in a daze, her personal belongings in a cardboard box that security had watched her pack. She hadn't even been able to say goodbye to Daniel. He was in a board meeting, probably fighting for his own position while she was being quietly disposed of. Her phone rang as she waited for the bus. Daniel. I just heard, he said without preamble. This is my fault. I'll fix it. You can't. Patricia showed me the photos. Someone's been watching us, documenting everything. Brennan has to be. He's making his move. There was a pause, the sound of a door closing. Emma, don't sign anything. Don't agree to anything. I'll handle this. How? By destroying your own position? The board's already gunning for you. Let me worry about the board. No. The word came out sharper than intended. This is exactly what they want you: distracted, emotional, making decisions based on personal feelings rather than business logic. Is that what you think this is? Personal feelings clouding my judgment? Emma closed her eyes, leaning against the bus stop shelter. I think you're a good man trying to help someone, and they're using that goodness against you. You're not just someone. The words hung between them, too honest for the bright morning light. I have to go, Emma said. Sophie needs me. Emma, wait. She hung up, cutting off whatever he might have said. Some words once spoken couldn't be taken back. Mrs. Chen was surprised to see her home early. Everything okay? Just some schedule changes. Emma lied, taking Sophie into her arms like a lifeline. Her daughter smiled, reaching for her face with chubby fingers, unaware that their fragile stability was crumbling. That afternoon, while Sophie napped, Emma did something she'd sworn she wouldn't. She called Ryan's parents. They'd cut contact after the funeral, blaming her for their son's death, saying if she hadn't been pregnant, he wouldn't have taken such dangerous work. Emma, her former mother-in-law's voice was cold, suspicious. What do you want? I need help. Sophie needs help. There was a long pause. We told you. I know what you told me, but she's your granddaughter, Ryan's daughter, and we're about to be homeless unless... Emma swallowed her pride. Unless you help us. Come by tomorrow. We'll discuss terms. Terms, as if Sophie was a business transaction. But Emma agreed, because what choice did she have that evening as she was bathing Sophie? Her door buzzed. She wasn't expecting anyone, and for a moment fear spiked. What if it was reporters? The scandal Patricia had warned about. But it was Daniel, looking haggard, his usual polish replaced by exhaustion. You shouldn't be here, Emma said, not opening the door fully. I've been suspended too. Board vote of no confidence pending a full review. He laughed bitterly. 15 years building that company, and they sideline me in 15 minutes. Against her better judgment, Emma let him in. He stood in her small living room, looking lost, like he didn't know what to do with his hands, without a phone or tablet in them. I'm sorry, Emma said. This is because of me. This is because of them. because they're scared of anything that reminds them business is about people, not just profits. He slumped onto her couch, the fight seeming to drain out of him. I keep thinking about my mother, how proud she was when I got the CEO position. You'll help people, she said. You'll make things better for families like ours. Instead, I became part of the system that keeps people down. You tried to help. Trying isn't enough. Sophie won't remember that I tried. She'll remember whether she had food, shelter, safety. Results matter, not intentions. Sophie, as if hearing her name, crawled over to Daniel, pulling herself up on his knees. He lifted her automatically and she settled against his chest with a contented sigh. She doesn't know you're suspended, Emma said softly. She just knows you're safe. I couldn't even protect you from the board, from Brennan, from a system I supposedly run. You're one person fighting an entire structure. That's not failure, it's courage. Daniel looked at her, then really looked at her, and Emma saw everything in his eyes, frustration, fear, and something deeper, more dangerous. I need to tell you something, he said, before this gets worse, before lawyers and investigations and corporate machinery make it impossible. Daniel, I'm falling in love with you. The words landed like stones in still water, rippling outward, changing everything. Emma couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but stare at him, holding her daughter like she was precious, like they were already a family. You can't, she whispered. Too late. The board, the investigation, will happen regardless. At least this way, there's truth in their accusations. What about Sophie? If this becomes public, if people think I'm just another woman who, you're not just another anything. He stood still, holding Sophie, moving closer to Emma. You're the woman who survived impossible circumstances with grace, who protected her daughter against all odds, who looked at a CEO and saw just a man who needed to remember why he started. This is crazy. Probably. It won't work. Maybe not. Sophie has to come first, always. I wouldn't respect you if she didn't. They stood inches apart, Sophie between them, like a small guardian of propriety. Then Sophie reached out one hand on Emma's face, one on Daniel's, and laughed, pure delighted, as if she'd discovered something wonderful. Even she thinks we're being ridiculous, Emma said, but she was crying, overwhelmed by the possibility and impossibility of it all. Or she knows something we're too scared to admit, Daniel countered. Before Emma could respond, her phone rang. Patricia from HR. Emma, I'm calling unofficially. The board just received new information about your husband, about his death. They're saying... She paused, clearly uncomfortable. They're saying you were having problems, that the pregnancy was unplanned, that his death might not have been accidental. The blood drained from Emma's face. That's insane. Ryan's death was investigated. It was an accident. I know, but they're going to use it to paint you as unstable, possibly dangerous. Someone who manipulated one man and might be doing the same to another. Emma, you need a lawyer, a good one. After Patricia hung up, Emma told Daniel everything. His expression darkened with each word. They're trying to destroy you to get to me, he said. This is my fault. Stop saying that. They're doing this because they're threatened, because you tried to change things, and I'm proof that change is needed. You need protection. Legal, financial. I need to leave, take Sophie, and disappear before this gets worse. Running won't solve anything. It might keep Sophie safe from the fallout, and teach her that when things get hard, you run. Daniel set Sophie down gently in her playpen. That's not who you are. You've known me for a few weeks. You don't know who I am. I know you hid your baby in a basement rather than give up. I know you worked through exhaustion, hunger, fear, all for her. I know you stood up to Whitman, contributed to strategy, and made me remember why any of this matters. I know exactly who you are, Emma Hayes. His phone buzzed, then again and again. He looked at the screen, his expression shifting from annoyance to alarm. What is it? The story broke. Someone leaked to the press. CEO's secret affair with single mother employee. They have the photos, the hotel records, everything twisted to look. He trailed off, showing her his phone. The headline was lurid, the article worse. They'd painted Emma as a gold digger who'd hidden her baby to gain sympathy, who'd seduced a grieving divorced man for financial gain. There was even speculation about Ryan's death, whether she'd been involved somehow. Emma sank onto the couch, feeling like the world was collapsing. Sophie's going to grow up with this. People will Google me and find this nightmare. We'll fight it. Sue for libel, demand retractions. With what money I can barely afford rent and you're suspended. Face it, Daniel, they won. No. His voice was fierce. They want us to give up, to slink away in shame. But we haven't done anything shameful. We haven't even... He gestured between them. We haven't crossed any lines. Haven't we? You just told me you're falling in love with me. And you haven't said it back, but you feel it too. I know you do. Emma wanted to deny it, but the words wouldn't come. She did feel it had been fighting it since he'd first helped her, since he'd seen her not as a problem, but as a person. It doesn't matter what I feel, she said finally. Sophie matters. Keeping her safe, providing for her, then let me help. Not as your boss, not as CEO, but as someone who cares about both of you. I can't be the woman who needed rescuing by a rich man, and I can't be the man who walked away when someone needed help. They stared at each other at an impasse. Sophie babbled from her playpen, oblivious to the adult drama, focused on a stuffed rabbit that had seen better days. Emma's phone rang again. Ryan's mother. We've seen the news, she said without preamble. This changes things. We're filing for custody. Emma's world tilted. What you can't. A mother who brings scandal, who exposed her grandchild to danger, who may have been involved in our son's death. We certainly can. Our lawyer will be in touch. The line went dead. Emma stared at the phone, unable to process this new disaster. Emma. Daniel moved toward her, but she held up a hand, stopping him. They're going to take her, Ryan's parents. They're filing for custody. They won't win. You're a good mother. I'm a mother who hid her baby in a basement, who just got fired for an alleged inappropriate relationship, who's about to be evicted because I can't make rent. They have money, lawyers, respectability. What do I have? You have me. No, I don't. Being with you makes everything worse. Don't you see? Every moment you're here gives them more ammunition. So I should just leave, abandon you to fight this alone. Yes? The word hurt to say, but Emma forced it out. Leave. Go salvage what you can of your company, your reputation. Forget about us. I can't do that. You have to, for Sophie. If you really care about her, you'll stay away. Daniel looked like she'd slapped him. You don't mean that. I do. Emma stood, moving to Sophie's playpen, picking up her daughter. Please, go. Emma, go. He left, and Emma heard his footsteps on the stairs, each one taking him farther away. Sophie fussed, sensing her mother's distress, and Emma held her close, whispering apologies for a future that seemed increasingly dark. The next 3 days passed in a nightmare blur. The news coverage got worse. Someone had found old social media posts from Ryan's college friends taken out of context to suggest their marriage had been troubled. Her landlord gave her an eviction notice, not wanting the attention her scandal brought. The custody papers arrived, filled with accusations that made Emma sound like an unfit monster. She'd found a lawyer through legal aid, but he was young, overwhelmed, clearly out of his depth against Ryan's parents' high-powered team. They're requesting an emergency hearing, he explained, claiming immediate danger to the child. We need character witnesses, evidence of your fitness as a mother. I have no one, Emma said flatly. My parents are dead. I have no family, no close friends. Just Mrs. Chen, and she's elderly foreign. They'll dismiss her testimony. What about your employer, former employer? The one I allegedly had an affair with? That'll help. The lawyer shuffled papers helplessly. We'll do our best. But Emma knew what that meant. best wouldn't be enough. The night before the custody hearing, Emma sat in her apartment boxes packed for the eviction. She couldn't fight holding Sophie, memorizing every detail. The way her hair curled at the nape of her neck, the perfect shell of her ears, her eyes so like Ryan's but with something of Emma's determination in them. "I'm so sorry, baby," she whispered. "I tried so hard to keep you safe, to give you everything, but sometimes love isn't enough." A knock at the door interrupted her despair. She expected Mrs. Chen, who'd been bringing food Emma couldn't eat, too sick with worry. But it was Daniel. He looked terrible, unshaven, hollow-eyed, wearing jeans and a t-shirt instead of his usual suits. "I told you to stay away. I did. For 3 days. And it nearly killed me." He pushed past her into the apartment. "I've been working on something. A solution." "There is no solution. There's always a solution if you're willing to pay the price." He pulled out his phone, showing her a document. "I'm selling my shares in Crestmart, all of them, to Brennan and his coalition." Emma stared at him. "That's insane. The company is your life." "No, the company was my escape. From feeling, from connection, from everything that mattered. You and Sophie, your life, real life." "Daniel, the sale will give me enough to fight this properly. Real lawyers, not legal aid. Private investigators to prove what really happened to Ryan. PR firms to combat the narrative, whatever it takes. You can't sacrifice everything for us." "It's not a sacrifice if I'm choosing something better." He moved closer, and Emma saw the determination in his eyes. "But there's one condition." "What?" "Marry me." The words hung in the air, impossible and perfect and terrifying. "You're crazy." "Probably. But think about it legally. As your husband, I can provide stability the court wants to see. Financial security, a 2-parent household, health insurance. Everything they're saying you can't give Sophie, we can provide together. A marriage of convenience? No." He reached out, cupping her face gently. "A marriage of choice. I choose you, Emma. You and Sophie. Not because you need saving, but because you've already saved me. From the emptiness, the isolation, the success that felt like failure. People will say I trapped you. Let them say it. We'll know the truth. What about love? Real love, not just crisis bonding. What we have is real. It's messy and complicated and probably too fast, but it's real, and it's more than most people get." Emma looked at Sophie, sleeping in her crib, despite the chaos around her. Then at Daniel, who'd offered to give up everything he'd built for them. "This is insane," she said. "Yes, it might not work. It might not. Sophie comes first, always. I wouldn't want it any other way." Emma thought about the custody hearing tomorrow, about Ryan's parents with their lawyers and accusations, about the media narrative painting her as a calculating seductress, about Sophie growing up without her mother because the system favored wealth over love. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, yes, I'll marry you. Not because I need saving, but because—" She took a breath, finally saying what she'd been fighting, "Because I love you too. Despite everything, because of everything, I love you." Daniel kissed her, then their first kiss, gentle and desperate and full of promise. Sophie stirred in her crib, making soft sounds, and they broke apart, laughing at the absurdity and beauty of it all. "We need witnesses," Emma said practically, "and a judge. And it's 9 at night. I know a judge owes me a favor, and Mrs. Chen would be a witness, wouldn't she?" 2 hours later, in a judge's study, with Mrs. Chen beaming and Sophie wide awake in Emma's arms, they exchanged vows. Simple ones, honest ones. Daniel promised to love and protect both Emma and Sophie. Emma promised to remind him what mattered when the world tried to make him forget. Sophie contributed cheerful babbling that the judge declared was definitely approval. "You know, this won't magically fix everything," Emma said as they signed the marriage certificate. "No, but it changes the game. Tomorrow you walk into that courtroom not as a single mother fighting alone, but as part of a family. Our family." Mrs. Chen insisted on taking a photo with her ancient camera, the 4 of them looking shell-shocked but somehow right. Sophie reached for Daniel just as the flash went off, and he caught her hand, their fingers intertwining. The custody hearing was scheduled for 9 a.m. Emma didn't sleep, spending the night in Daniel's arms on her couch. Sophie in the bassinet beside them, all three learning the rhythm of being together. "What if we lose?" Emma asked in the pre-dawn darkness. "Then we appeal, we fight, we never stop fighting. Your board meeting is at the same time. You're really going to miss it. I'm really going to miss it. Some things matter more than companies." Daniel Cross, romantic. Who would have thought? Daniel Cross, husband and father. Even more surprising. Father. The word sent warmth through Emma. Not stepfather, not guardian, but father. The role Sophie needed, the partner Emma had thought she'd never find again. Morning came too soon. Daniel had arranged for a car, and they arrived at the courthouse to find media everywhere. The story had evolved overnight. CEO gives up everything for love. Some outlets were painting it as romantic, others as proof of mental instability. Ryan's parents were already there, backed by a team of lawyers who looked like they ate smaller lawyers for breakfast. Ryan's mother's expression when she saw Daniel was priceless: shock, calculation, fury. "You think marrying money will save you?" she hissed at Emma. "I think marrying someone who loves my daughter will help." "Yes," Emma replied, finding strength in Daniel's presence beside her. The judge, different from the one who'd married them, reviewed the case with obvious interest. This had become more than a simple custody hearing. It was a media spectacle. Ryan's parents' lawyer went first, painting Emma as neglectful, deceptive, possibly dangerous. The basement allegations were presented dramatically, making it sound like Emma had endangered Sophie daily. Then their lawyer, one Daniel had somehow procured overnight, sharp and expensive, presented their case. The truth about the basement, but also the love behind it. Mrs. Chen testified about Emma's devotion. The pediatrician confirmed Sophie was healthy, well cared for, thriving. But the turning point came when Daniel took the stand. "Mr. Cross," the opposing lawyer said smugly, "you've known Ms. Hayes, excuse me, Mrs. Cross, for mere weeks, yet you married her yesterday. Doesn't that suggest impulsiveness, instability?" "It suggests clarity," Daniel replied calmly. "When you've spent years in the dark, recognizing light doesn't take long. You gave up your position, your company shares, for this woman and her child. Some would call that evidence of manipulation. Some would be wrong. I gave up things that were killing me slowly for people who made me want to live fully. And the child, Sophie, you've known her even less time." Daniel's expression softened. "Sophie doesn't care about my net worth or my corporate position. She cares that I show up, that I'm gentle with her mother, that I sing off-key but enthusiastically during bath time. She's taught me more about what matters in 3 weeks than 15 years of business taught me about success." "So you claim to love a child you've barely known?" "I claim to have chosen her. Love will follow choice, strengthen with time, but the choice to be her father, to be there for every fever, every first word, every moment that choice is made." Emma watched the judge's expression shift. This wasn't what anyone had expected, not a business transaction or a rushed mistake, but something rarer, genuine commitment. Ryan's mother took the stand next, but her testimony felt hollow after Daniel's sincerity. She talked about resources, stability, proper care, but never once mentioned love. During recess, Emma's phone buzzed. The media was going crazy. Daniel's testimony had gone viral. The narrative was shifting from scandal to fairy tale, from manipulation to genuine connection. "We might actually win this," her lawyer whispered to Simon. But Emma was watching Daniel with Sophie in the courthouse hallway. He was walking her up and down, Sophie fascinated by the fluorescent lights, occasionally grabbing his tie. They looked like they'd always been together, like this was exactly where they both belonged. When court reconvened, the judge cleared his throat. "This case has been unusual, to say the least. Allegations have been made, money has changed hands, and the media has had a field day. But at the center of this is a child who needs stability, love, and proper care." Emma held her breath. "I see no evidence that Mrs. Cross is an unfit mother. The circumstances she faced were extreme, and her solutions, while unconventional, came from love and desperation, not neglect. Furthermore, the child now has a two-parent household, with considerable resources and clear commitment from both parties. Ryan's mother made a sound of protest. However, the judge continued, and Emma's heart sank. Given the unusual circumstances of this sudden marriage and the concerns raised, I'm ordering monthly welfare checks for the next 6 months. If those reports are satisfactory, this matter will be closed. Your Honor, Ryan's father stood. Our son would want. Your son is gone, the judge said, not unkindly but firmly. And while your grief is understandable, it doesn't give you the right to take a child from a loving mother. Case dismissed. Emma collapsed against Daniel's Sophie between them, all three clinging to each other. They'd won. Somehow impossibly they'd won. Outside the courthouse, the media frenzy continued, but Daniel navigated them through it to a waiting car. As they drove away, Emma's phone rang. Patricia from HR. The board meeting just ended, she reported. Without Daniel there to defend himself, Brennan pushed through the vote. He's officially removed as CEO. Emma looked at Daniel, expecting devastation, but he was smiling, playing peekaboo with Sophie. Did you hear? I heard, and I don't care. Let Brennan have it. He'll run it into the ground within 2 years, focused on profits over people. Meanwhile, I'll build something new, something better. With what you sold, everything. Not everything. I kept enough to start over, and this time I'll build it right. A company that actually helps people like us, like we were. Single parents, desperate workers, people the system forgets. We, Emma repeated. You keep saying we. We're married, remember. Your fights are my fights. My dreams are your dreams. That's how this works. That evening in Daniel's apartment, now Emma stood at windows that overlooked the city, Sophie sleeping in her arms. Daniel came up behind them, wrapping his arms around both. Any regrets, he asked, about marrying a man I've known for 3 weeks, who gave up everything for me and Sophie, who fought my battles when I couldn't fight anymore? Emma leaned back against him. No regrets. It won't be easy. The media attention will continue. People will always wonder about us, judge us. Let them. We know the truth. Which is... Emma turned in his arms, Sophie still sleeping between them. That sometimes love doesn't follow the rules. Sometimes it comes from desperation and kindness colliding. Sometimes it looks like a basement nursery and a CEO who remembers being poor. Sometimes it's messy and fast and absolutely insane. But real. The realest thing I've ever felt besides Sophie. They stood there, the three of them, as the city lights came on below. Tomorrow would bring challenges. Daniel's new business venture, Emma's return to school with the education benefits that transferred with the marriage, Sophie's continued growth and development. There would be hard days, arguments, moments of doubt, but tonight they were simply a family. Unconventional, unexpected, but unquestionably together. Sophie stirred, opening her eyes, looking from Emma to Daniel with that serious baby expression. Then she smiled, reaching for both of them simultaneously, as if to say this was right, this was home, this was what she'd been waiting for all along. She approves, Daniel said softly. She's the smartest of all of us, Emma replied. Later, after Sophie was in her new crib and in her new nursery, a real one with painted walls and windows that let in morning light, Emma and Daniel sat on their couch trying to process everything that had happened. 3 weeks ago, I was hiding Sophie in a basement, Emma said wonderingly. 3 weeks ago, I thought success meant stock prices and board approval. Now look at us. Unemployed, married, and responsible for a baby who thinks my phone is a chew toy. They laughed, but it was laughter mixed with tears, the kind that comes when you've survived something you shouldn't have, when you've found something you didn't know you were looking for. Daniel. Thank you for seeing us, for choosing us, for being brave enough to change everything. Emma. Yes. Thank you for reminding me that courage isn't about hostile takeovers. It's about showing up when everything is against you. You taught me that, you and Sophie both." They kissed, then slow and sweet, a promise of all the kisses to come. In her nursery, Sophie slept peacefully, unaware that her life had just transformed completely. She didn't know about boardrooms or custody battles or media scandals. She only knew that when she cried, someone came. When she reached out, someone reached back. When she needed love, it surrounded her, fierce and protective and unconditional. The story that had started in a supermarket basement had become something else entirely, not a tragedy or a scandal, but a love story. Unconventional, certainly. Fast, absolutely. But real in a way that corporate success had never been, lasting in a way that stock prices could never be. Outside, the city hummed with its endless energy, millions of people living their own struggles, their own triumphs, their own unexpected love stories. But inside the apartment on the 40th floor, a new family was learning how to be together, how to build something from trust and desperation, and the kind of love that doesn't wait for perfect timing. "Tomorrow's going to be interesting," Emma said, thinking of all the challenges ahead. "Every tomorrow from now on will be interesting," Daniel replied, pulling her closer. And in her nursery, Sophie sighed in her sleep, dreaming baby dreams in her safe space, loved beyond measure by two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely way, who'd chosen each other when choosing seemed impossible, who'd built a family from broken pieces and desperate love, and the kind of courage that looks like a mother feeding her baby in a basement, a CEO mopping floors to understand truth, and two people saying yes to a future they couldn't fully imagine but desperately wanted to share.